This is Atomic Shinobi and today I am going to narrate what if Kid Naruto helped Kid Hinata after banishment. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
I mean, it's not really right for us to do that, you know. Her response was, I'm sure, Naruto. Just please stay. Naruto crept slowly into the bed next to her. He didn't push the girl away, but he was taken aback when she grabbed him and cuddled up to him like he was some sort of plush toy. Rather, he wrapped her in his arms and held her tenderly. Naruto became aware that the girl was terrified to sleep by herself when he felt her trembling in his arms. He said, Are you all right, Hinata? Hinata raised her gaze to Naruto. She said, As long as you're here, I'm fine. The two children closed their eyes and fell asleep in each other's arms after saying, I'm sorry, Naruto. It's just that I really don't want to be alone tonight. Thank you for staying. Slowly, Naruto opened his eyes. He felt strangely heavy as he looked around. To his surprise, he discovered Hinata sleeping soundly, her head resting on his chest. Instead of rousing the sleeping girl, he gave her a gentle back rub, allowing her to continue sleeping. After all, her weight on him was, in a way, rather reassuring. Naruto was once again struck by how adorable the girl was as he watched her sleep. In her sleep, her face appeared so serene, and she somehow had an angelic appearance with her long dark hair framing her pale face. He began to hum a little tune he had made up on the spot. The girl was eventually awakened by the humming and rubbing. With her eyes open, Hinata surveyed her surroundings. She took a moment to orient herself. After all, she was not in her own bed or the Hyuga compound. She smiled as she remembered Naruto from the day before, when he had rescued her from the bullies, and realized she was still in her savior's arms. Still humming and softly massaging her back, Naruto smiled back at her. Naruto said, Good morning, beautiful, which made Hinata flush. She responded, Good morning yourself. After a brief pause, she paused to think, You stayed. Naruto laughed. He said, Well, sure I stayed. You asked me to, as though it were the most natural thing for him to do. Hinata leaned forward and gave Naruto a cheek kiss. Thank you, she offered. After blushing from the kiss, Naruto simply grinned and got out of bed. All right, first, I'm going to make us some breakfast, then we're going to go talk to the Hokage and see what we can do about your situation. Oh, is there anything you left behind at your old place you want to get in particular? After giving that some thought, Hinata let out a gasp. Oh, my diary, and my mother's necklace. I can't believe I forgot them. Naruto gave a gentle smile. It's okay, Hinata, we'll talk to the Hokage and see if he can help us get them back for you, he replied. After taking a deep breath, Hinata decided to trust Naruto and nodded. The blonde vanished after saying, Go ahead and get dressed, I'll make us some breakfast, and we can go see the old man. Hinata was left to get dressed peacefully. Naruto let out a sigh. Naruto told himself, I'm glad I went to the store yesterday. He moved swiftly, removing ingredients and starting to mix, quietly and effectively. Hinata was dressed and coming out of the bedroom when Naruto was putting a pan of cinnamon rolls in the oven. When Hinata saw and smelled the enormous sweet rolls, she gasped. She questioned, How did you know, Naruto? Naruto gave her a perplexed look. Cinnamon rolls, they're my favorite, she declared. Naruto smiled. I'm glad. I was afraid you wouldn't like them, he replied. I just had the stuff for them, and I'd been meaning to make a batch for a while anyway, so it's your lucky day, I guess. Hinata grinned once more. It's very sweet of you to do all this for me, she replied. With a laugh, Naruto waved her away. His words, Think nothing of it, Hinata. He went into his bedroom, changed, and returned just in time to take the rolls out of the oven, saying, Now, I'll get dressed so we can go see the old man once we're done eating. They just came out, so they're really hot. Help yourself, but be careful, don't burn yourself. He placed them on top of his stove and gave her a knife and fork so she could cut and remove the rolls from the pan. Hinata gave a nod. Unable to resist, she quickly took one of the rolls out of the pan, being cautious to touch it only with her utensils. She carefully started eating the extremely hot sweet roll after taking a seat at Naruto's table. Naruto sat down with her after grabbing one of the rolls himself. They ate together in friendly silence. When they were both finished, Naruto said, All right, you ready to go talk to the Hokage and go get your stuff back? Yep. Hinata exclaimed with joy. She had woken up in Naruto's arms, they had shared her favorite breakfast, and now they were heading to retrieve her belongings. She had a feeling that today would be fantastic. On their way to meet the Hokage, the two lonesome kids headed down the Leaf Village's main street. Naruto gave Hinata a look. For the first time, he recognized how much they actually had in common. In their brief lives thus far, they had both experienced extreme loneliness, rejection from everyone around them, and never acceptance for who they were. However, they now had each other. Hinata, Naruto murmured. To Hinata's surprise, a faint smile appeared on his face as she looked up at him. The intense expression in his eyes made her flush, but she smiled back and nodded, allowing him to continue. I was just thinking how we've both always been alone, never having anyone. But now, we have one another, right? Hinata grinned once more. Right, Naruto, now we have one another. With a gentle smile, Naruto remarked, good, and I promise, Hinata, I will never leave you to be alone again, I'll always be by your side. As the significance of his words dawned on Hinata, she flushed. I'll always be with you, too, Naruto, she replied, grinning at him. Her words made Naruto smile. Naruto noticed that they had reached the Hokage tower when he looked up. With a nod, Hinata said, well, here we are, Hinata, you ready? And the two headed up to the Hokage's office inside the building. Naruto said, hey, old man, I need a word with you, as he and Hinata went into the office. As Naruto entered, the elderly third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, glanced up at him. Oh, good morning, Naruto, what can I do for you today? Said he. For the better part of the next 30 minutes, Naruto and Hinata described their predicament and their needs. Hiruzen gave a nod. I think I can take a short time to come help you. I need to talk to Hiashi, anyway. A few minutes later, the Hokage was in front of Naruto and Hinata as they approached the Hyuga compound. The Hokage and his two followers insisted on being let in. They were all led into the compound by the two gatekeepers who dared not oppose him. While the elderly man moved more slowly in the direction of Hiashi's study, Naruto and Hinata headed straight for Hinata's room. Naruto remarked, I'll leave you here to get your things. Hinata nodded and said, I'm going to do some snooping, I'll be back soon. After leaving her room, Naruto started to explore the building's corridors. His return route was always in the back of his mind as he wandered aimlessly until he heard voices. He had a target because of that, so he headed in the direction where he could hear them. Naruto realized the voices were coming from the room on the other side of a door as he got closer. Silently he walked toward it. He appeared to go unnoticed inside. He shuddered in horror at what he heard. One voice exclaimed, we are overriding you, Hiashi, with a tone of rage. Yes, if she is to be cast out of the clan, she must be sealed, and as you have obviously not yet filed the papers, she is still legally in our clan, so we will seal her, another replied, sounding proud. A third voice, which Naruto assumed was Hiashi, said, Lord Hokage? With a terrified tone. The third Hokage's voice began, I'm sorry, Hiashi, but they're right. She is still legally in your clan, which makes this an internal clan affair. I can do nothing, the voice said. The prior voice said, I see, confirming Naruto's suspicion that it was Hiashi. This time, the first voice to speak sounded more haughty than irate. We must get her now, while she is still in the compound, it said. Naruto was done listening. I'm not sure what it is they want to do to Hinata, but I will not let them do it, he said. With that in mind, he headed out, heading straight back to Hinata's room. His hand rapped on her door. Hinata? Concerned by the urgency in his voice, she said, yes, Naruto, what is it? He questioned her, do you have everything you need? He didn't want to worry her, but if they wanted to leave, they needed to move quickly. Hinata replied, yeah, I'm ready. Why, what's wrong? She was taken aback when Naruto stormed into her room, seized her hand, and dragged her along with him as he fled her room, running out of the compound and back onto the street. Until they had returned to his apartment, he would not allow them to stop. Naruto, what in the world happened? He informed her, Hinata, they're going to seal you. Hinata let out a gasp. Naruto inhaled deeply. When I was wandering around, I heard your father, the old man, and a bunch of other people talking. They were saying they were overriding your father and that they were going to seal you. Hinata questioned, but we're safe here, now, right? Somehow, she knew it was a wishful thinking. He trailed off, reflecting, no, I'm sure they know you're here with me by now. Hinata had a worried expression. Hinata. We have to go. We have to run away, away from the village, away from everything, at least until this all blows over. And we can't tell anyone we're going, not even the old man. He said he couldn't do anything to help us. Along with everything else Naruto had told her, Hinata considered that. She knew he was right. All right, Naruto, we'll go, she said. But we need to pack anything you have that we might need first. With a nod, Naruto went to his closet and took out a bag. This has all my camping stuff in it, a tent, 2 sleeping bags and some stuff we can use to start fires, plus a few spare sets of clothes I have. Most of your stuff is still in that bag you had last night, so just grab that and I'll grab a few more things and we'll be good to go, he stated. After giving a nod, Hinata entered the bedroom and picked up her bag from where she had left it the previous morning. Naruto took a box from the top of his closet while the two children gathered their belongings from the restroom and threw them into their bags. "I'll explain later, but I'm not going anywhere without this," he replied. Hinata gave a nod. "So, are we ready now?" Hinata paused to reflect. "Yeah, though I don't know what we're going to do for food," she replied. Naruto laughed. "Don't worry, I've got that covered. All right, let's get out of here," he assured the young girl. Hinata gave a nod. After taking her hand, Naruto walked out of his apartment with her. The two ran to the main gate of the village as soon as they were back on street level. After waiting for the gate guards to become distracted, the two sprinted as quickly as they could through the gate and into the forest beyond the actual village. Hinata and Naruto turned around and gazed at the hidden leaf village gate. Naruto uttered the words, "We will return, someday," more to himself than to Hinata. Hinata wasn't positive whether he was addressing the Hokage or the village, but she didn't think it really mattered. Until then, goodbye, old friend. The Hyuga clan was traveling to Naruto's apartment as he and Hinata were leaving the village. They were headed to find Hinata after the third Hokage unintentionally revealed her lodging location. In an attempt to at least lessen the blow, Hiashi knocked on the door when they arrived. Nobody responded. Baikugan in hand, Hiashi remarked, "There's no one here." The clan needed no more motivation after that. They broke down the door and ran through the apartment in search of the blonde or their missing heiress. Neither was discovered. Hiruzen stopped Hiashi as they were about to leave and indicated a location in the closet that appeared to have been recently moved because it was completely dust-free. The old man clarified, unless he wasn't returning for a while, Naruto would never take that. "He's left the village, no doubt Hinata with him, to keep her away from your clan." Hiashi grinned. "Good. He's saved her again, it seems," he replied. "In the meantime, is there anyone you can send to keep an eye on them and make sure they're safe out there?" Hiruzen considered that. "There is, but it will take him a long time to get here, a couple years probably. He's in very deep cover at the moment," replied the third. Hiashi let out a sigh. When he said, "Naruto's lived on his own, I'm sure he'll keep them alive at least. That will have to do. Please, do what you can, Lord Hokage." It was clear that he was worried about his daughter. The reply from Hiruzen was, "I will, Hiashi, I will." "Oh, Naruto. What in the world were you thinking? Just be safe out there, Naruto. Please be safe," thought the elderly gentleman. "Your father would never forgive me if anything happened to you." With a sigh, Naruto and Hinata stepped through the main gate of Leaf Village and into the forest. He never imagined that he would ever flee the village in this manner, but here he was, escaping as if his life depended on it. Although his life didn't, he valued his first and only friend's freedom just as much, in relation to his friend. He whispered, "We'll be back someday, Hinata," to the girl with the raven hair who was following him a little. "I just don't think I could protect you from your whole clan if we stayed in the village." Hinata felt sorry for the boy because he sounded so depressed. She took a position next to him and put her hand in the bend of his elbow. "My hero," she grinned and said. Naruto gave her a startled look and flushed when he realized she was serious. Hinata laughed. She assured him, seriously, "Naruto, it's fine, I understand, I'm grateful that you would give up everything you had there to protect me." Naruto gave a wry smile. He remarked, "You saw my apartment, Hinata." Hinata nodded, her eyes betraying her bewilderment. "That's all I have. I have no family, no friends, no one but old man Hokage will even care that I'm gone." Hinata turned back to the boy, startled. She had not noticed how isolated he was. She questioned him, "If you're so alone, why did you help me?" She wasn't unappreciative, but she couldn't understand why someone who had no one to look out for or defend them would do those things for someone else, especially a failure like her and someone they didn't know. Naruto gave his companion a tiny smile. His voice revealed how much he already missed the third. "It's something old man Hokage told me once," he said. "It was when I first declared that I wanted to be Hokage." Rewind excited, Naruto ran toward the Hokage tower. At last, he had made up his mind about his life's purpose. He was finally able to respond to the Hokage's question about his dream, which he had been asked a week earlier. Old man, he shouted while sprinting. Despite the secretary's attempts to stop him, he continued walking across the tower's lobby. Not until he had exploded into the Hokage's office did he stop. "Old man," he shouted again just to be safe. The third Hokage, who was now an elderly man, grinned at the young blonde as he looked up from the paperwork he was constantly juggling. "I know what my dream is." The third Kage of the Leaf Village, Hiruzen Sarutobi, a two-time veteran, seasoned shinobi, and longtime widower, grinned at the young child who had barged into his office. With a humorous tone, he said, Oh, do you now? And what have you decided your dream is, Naruto? Naruto gestured toward the hat that was perched atop the Hokage's head. I'm going to be Hokage, just like you, he exclaimed to the man, his enthusiasm unwavering. Naruto was rewarded with a unique sight in return. The old man couldn't contain his laughter as the third Hokage's eyes wrinkled and the lines on his face slightly deepened as a smile slowly appeared on his lips. One of the 5 great shinobi nation's military dictator laughed loudly and long from the bottom of his stomach until his eyes began to well up with tears. Confused, Naruto posed the obvious query, what's so funny? Nothing, Naruto, nothing at all. I think that is a most honorable and admirable dream, and, if you work hard, you will achieve it one day. Hiruzen replied, wiping his eyes and breathing slowly. But first, I have to ask you, do you really know what it means to be Hokage? Naruto gave that some thought. With a childlike innocence in his voice, he questioned, it means you're the strongest shinobi in the land, right? That everyone looks up to you, respects you, and acknowledges that you're the best? Hiruzen laughed. While it's true that those things happen when you are Hokage, that's not what being Hokage means, he said with a smile. Naruto gave him a perplexed look. When you are Hokage, every single person in the village must be precious to you. You must be willing to protect all of them with your life, even if they don't treat you the best. It means that you are their protector, their head, and their leader all rolled into one. You are the one they turn to when they're threatened, scared, or in need. You must earn their trust, their respect, and their love in order to actually be Hokage. Otherwise, you are Hokage in name only. It is only by earning the acknowledgement of the people that you can truly be Hokage. Becoming Hokage will not earn you their respect, earning it is only a single step on the road to becoming Hokage. Naruto considered that. The third nodded, but he was mainly talking to himself when he said, so, if I'm going to be Hokage, I'll have to protect everyone in the village, even if I don't know them. A moment later, Naruto nodded. Then I guess I better get started right now, he exclaimed, leaving a laughing Hiruzen in his wake as he fled the Hokage's office in pursuit of someone to defend. End of flashback. So, when I saw you getting bullied that day, I knew immediately what I had to do, Naruto said. It wasn't a question to me. You were in trouble, and if I was going to be Hokage, I had to protect you. It was just that simple. After giving Naruto a gentle smile, Hinata gave him a hug. Even so, she remarked, grasping his waist with her arms. You did protect me. Naruto. Even if no one else ever acknowledges you, you'll always be my hero. Naruto reddened. He said, and I'll always be here for you, Hinata, after a brief pause. At his remark, Hinata also flushed. Before continuing down the path into the forest, the two paused and gave each other a brief embrace. After a few moments, Hinata blushed once more as Naruto remarked, you know, Hinata, as long as you're at my side, I feel like I could face the entire world. I mean, it doesn't matter who comes against us, so long as we're together, we'll be perfectly fine. Shyly, Hinata extended her hand and clasped Naruto's fingers together, saying in a low voice, it doesn't matter what enemy I encounter, she said. I know I'll always be fine so long as I've got my hero at my side. For the remainder of that day, the two walked hand in friendly silence. In the worst of times, the relationship they forged that day would be their savior. With a heavy sigh, Hiashi Hyuga, the leader of the Hyuga clan, walked into the room where his council was waiting for him. He had to will himself not to attack any of them as he stood in front of them. He said, it is done, to them. Some appeared apathetic, some angry, and some perplexed. Hinata is no longer Hyuga, you have no say over her. If she ever returns to this village, you will not touch her. The father's rage was directed at the few council members who were visibly incensed by his remarks. Then one of the perplexed members spoke. If Hinata is no longer a Hyuga, who will be the heir to your seat, Hiashi? Asked he. Hiashi let out another sigh. My younger daughter, Hanabi, will take my place when I step down, he replied. What needed to be done had to be done, even though he hadn't been looking forward to telling them that. The tall, regal man turned on his heel and stalked out of the room, his annoyance evident to those who knew him. The paperwork for all of this has already been filed with the Hokage. I'm sure some of you in this room will come to regret what has been done this day. Hiashi returned to his study and took a seat at his desk. He took out a small scroll from the Hokage's office that had been delivered to him earlier that day, opened it, and read it. An observer would have witnessed a very uncommon sight by the time he was done. Hiashi Hyuga, the leader of the stoic Hyuga clan, sitting at his desk and crying into his hands. Examining the scroll in his hands, the third Hokage sighed. The contents had been copied and the copy sent to Hiashi Hyuga, as they concerned him as well. Naruto, the elderly man pondered. He was ashamed to admit that he occasionally worried more about that one boy than roughly half of the villagers. "What are you doing out there? Are you taking care of yourself? Of Hinata?" he asked. He sighed once more as he read the scroll. He was aware that this must be completely upsetting his former pupil. The Toad Sage must have been in a state of emotional turmoil knowing that his former student's son was out there, alone in the wilderness at the age of 8, and that someone his own age was depending on him to keep her alive, no less, and that there was nothing he could do to help the boy. There weren't many words on the scroll he was holding. Message received. Will retrieve Foundling as soon as possible. Foundling must survive 2 years without assistance. Hiruzen drew on his pipe for a long time, thinking about the situation. Along with a brief description of the code he and Jiraiya had been using, he had told Hiashi this. He was at a loss for what else to do. Although he knew it would be a terrible idea, he could theoretically send one of his trusted Anbu to watch over Naruto. Naruto wasn't exactly a trusting person because of his past and upbringing. He would, at best, attempt to get rid of the man or, at worst, attack him if he found out that a Leaf Anbu was pursuing him and Hinata. Being a realist at heart, Hiruzen understood that Naruto would probably not trust the Leaf Village in general at this time. He couldn't really blame the boy for what had happened. Hiruzen leaned back in his chair to reflect while puffing on his pipe once more. He hadn't faced such a dilemma in a number of years. He longed desperately to monitor Naruto in some way, but he was unable to do so without undermining the village's remaining faith in the boy. Naruto had to do the one thing he detested the most, to do nothing to prevent himself from detesting the village. He let out another sigh. The next 2 years would be long. Jiraiya examined the scroll that his old sensei had summoned to him through messenger. By now, he had read it so many times that he knew its contents by heart. Even though there wasn't much in it and what was there was in code, he was already well versed in every line. It simply read, "Foundling has left the nest. Request immediate assistance." Jiraiya could see why his sensei was warning him, on the one hand. After all, Foundling was a reference to his godson. On the other hand, it only served to make Jiraiya feel the most guilty he had ever felt in his life. This had a very straightforward explanation. Right now, the Toad Sage was deep undercover, and he had no chance of escaping his current situation before 2 years had passed. His fingers tightened on the scroll as he moaned once more. He asked himself, "Oh, Naruto, why did you have to leave now?" Jiraiya reviewed his mission plans. "You silly blondes are always getting me into trouble. Your father would come back from Shinigami's own gut if he thought I was neglecting you at a time like this and kill me," Jiraiya said. He found that he could knock off at most 6 months with a little tinkering, but that still left Naruto alone in the wilderness for a year and a half. Jiraiya gave a deep growl. He detested being powerless. Unfortunately, Jiraiya's mission was absolutely essential for the safety of the village. If not, he would have been happy to leave it behind in order to go and look after Naruto. After 8 years of not seeing the brat, Jiraiya could still picture him from the night of his birth, with blonde, spiky hair like his father's and, if he was not mistaken, as energetic as his red-haired mother. Jiraiya smiled momentarily as he reminisced about his former pupil and the child's spouse. For a moment, Jiraiya reclined against his bed's headboard, remembering the moments he had spent with Minato and Kushina during Kushina's pregnancy, before everything went awry. Jiraiya briefly claimed to have seen the two people in front of him. With tears in his eyes, he gave a sorrowful smile. He asked them, "What would you have me do?" Kushina and Minato merely grinned back before disappearing. Jiraiya let out a sigh. "I'm not sure if that means they're proud of me and to keep up the good work, or if that means they think that was a stupid question and the answer should be obvious," he thought to himself. He moaned once more. Even when I'm only imagining them they confuse the hell out of me without even saying a word." Leaning against the headboard, Jiraiya pounded his head a couple of times, searching for something he could do better than what he was doing now. There was nothing more he could do to escape that place more quickly, nothing. For a few minutes, he paced the room in an attempt to vent his frustration. He detested this sense of helplessness. With a sigh, he collapsed onto the bed and shut his eyes. He soon fell into a restless sleep that was filled with nightmares of Naruto alone and surrounded by the enemy. For hours, Naruto and Hinata had been making their way farther and farther into the forest. Along the path they were following, they now came to a small clearing. Naruto put his bag down. "This looks like a good place to camp for tonight," said the man. Hinata glanced around. It did appear to be a nice location, but it seemed a bit too convenient for them to find it so close to nightfall. Hinata dismissed her misgivings and went to assist Naruto in erecting the tent and lighting the fire. Hinata observed the little boy. As they set up camp, she noticed that he glanced at her a few times, but he seemed to be very focused on his work. After setting up the tent, Hinata collected firewood to keep their little fire going through the night while Naruto went to fetch water. Naruto returned with a rather large hair after getting some water. He smiled and exclaimed, "I got us dinner." Hinata nodded and grinned. She was a calm person, yes, and although she may not have enjoyed killing, they needed to eat, and the rabbit would be beneficial to them both. Hinata used the herbs she found nearby to season the meat because she remembered her mother telling her they were good for cooking. Despite using a less than ideal cooking method, the two were pleasantly surprised by how flavorful and juicy the meat was when they sat down to eat it. "How did you catch the rabbit, Naruto?" Hinata asked timidly after pondering for a few minutes. Then he sighed and replied, "I've camped out here before, that's how I knew where this place was. I have a few places where I keep traps set up out here, and don't worry, they don't spring unless I prime them, which I did when I went to get water. On my way back, I found this guy in one of them." Hinata gave a nod. "I guess that's what you meant when you said you had food covered, huh?" Naruto rubbed the back of his neck and laughed. "Yeah, that's what I meant. That box I brought with me. Well, it'll help with that, too," he said, hesitant to describe the contents of the box. That was accepted by Hinata, and the two went to bed after eating their dinner. Though she would never dare say it out loud, Hinata was relieved that they only had one tent. It rained lightly during the night, and the sound on the tent's roof brought back memories of the night the blonde had discovered the girl sobbing in the alley and invited her to his house. Moving her sleeping bag to Naruto's side, Hinata curled up next to him, resting her head on his shoulder. In response, Naruto put a gentle arm around her. Hinata asked softly, her voice laden with drowsiness, "Naruto?" "Yeah, Hinata?" Naruto replied in a sluggish, slow voice. She blushed a little in the tense darkness and said, "Even though things haven't gone quite as we expected, I'm glad we met." Naruto laughed and gave Hinata a small shoulder squeeze. Silently, "Me too, Hinata," he said. The two lonely kids were shocked at how quickly their growing love for one another had swept away the painful rejection they had experienced at home. The gentle sound of the rain soon lulled the two to sleep. Hiruzen Sarutobi let out a loud groan. It had been the longest 3 weeks of his life. He had taken every precaution to prevent news of Naruto and Hinata's disappearance from spreading after Naruto had left. But, if the message he was reading was to be believed, word had somehow already made it as far as the Hidden Rock village despite his best efforts. Like the majority of the messages the old man got, this one was coded. It said, "Have heard rumors of a sacrificed human and a deposed future head roaming free. Did the foundling pack an extra suitcase when it left the nest?" Rereading the brief message for what must have been the 55th time since he had received it, Hiruzen laughed at Jiraiya's choice of words. In response, he had informed Jiraiya that his suspicions were indeed correct. But the content of Jiraiya's message was his biggest concern. It was obvious that he had learned of Naruto and Hinata's departure from the village from a totally unaffiliated source. If that were the case, it was reasonable to presume that the Tsuchikage were also aware of it and would probably be looking for Naruto or, more accurately, Hinata. Hiruzen uttered a quiet, "Oh, Naruto." He took a deep breath and added, "If I survive 2 years of this, it'll be a miracle. Be safe out there." Hiruzen was about to finish when someone knocked on his door. It was Iruka Amino who appeared when he called for someone to come in. Usually a cheerful man, the young instructor with the scar across his face and the high top-knot haircut had a smile for everyone. But today he had a serious expression, a fixed mouth, and resolute eyes. "Lord Hokage," he said, "I need to speak to you concerning a matter of grave importance." Iruka's demeanor made Hiruzen smile a little. Since he was a boy, he had liked the young man. As Iruka matured from the class clown of his own generation to the lovely young Chunin in front of him, he had kept an eye on him. Hiruzen couldn't help but smile, even though Iruka's attitude at the moment was unusual for the young man. He had missed Iruka and was happy to see him. He said, "Yes, Iruka, what can I do for you?" "I had noticed for a couple weeks that 2 students had disappeared from the academy," Iruka explained. After a moment of staring into Iruka's eyes, Hiruzen nodded solemnly. "And now I hear that Naruto and Hinata have in fact left the village entirely. Is this true?" Iruka let out a sigh and somewhat deflated. After a brief moment of apparent reflection on what he had learned, Iruka went on, "In that case, Lord Hokage, I feel it is necessary that I begin training and testing immediately to become a Jonin. I was afraid of that." Hiruzen let out a gasp. Iruka had consistently argued that the time wasn't right, despite his repeated attempts to persuade him to run for Jonin promotion. Here he was now, almost requesting it. "Why the sudden change of heart, Iruka?" asked the man. Iruka let out a sigh. "Apparently, my skills and dedication are not enough, if 2 of my students can vanish from the village for weeks before I become aware of it. If that is the case, I feel I must better myself and become a better shinobi. And I feel that the best way for me to do that is to become a jonin, he stated. I wish to remain a teacher, if possible, but I feel that the time for me to become a jonin has come. Hiruzen gave a nod. I will see to it that you remain a teacher, Iruka. You are an exceptional instructor, and I feel that you serve your village best there. If you wish to become a jonin, however, I will do what I can to help you, including training you myself if need be. I can also suggest others to help you train if necessary. Regardless, Iruka, you have made an old man proud. Your old fire is strong, and I am proud to call you a leaf shinobi, he said, beaming at the chunin. Is there anything else, Iruka? He asked after a moment's silence, to which Iruka shook his head. Iruka bowed to his boss and walked out of his office, saying, in that case, you are dismissed. Hiruzen lit his pipe and reclined in his chair. I still wish you could have stayed in the village, Naruto. But maybe there was a reason for this. I wonder. Will you even know this old place by the time you return? He muttered to himself as he smoked it thoughtfully. Jiraiya the Toad Sage was impatiently waiting for the return of the toad he had sent to his old sensei, pacing his hotel room back and forth. In addition to being out in the wilderness, Naruto was carrying the former Hyuga clan heiress, who wasn't sealed, if the rumors he had heard were accurate. Although having a companion was preferable to being alone, and it would undoubtedly explain why Naruto was out there in the first place, it would also imply that he was caring for a young girl, most likely his own age, who was depending on him for care. Furthermore, Naruto was just 8 years old. Having grown up alone, Jiraiya was certain the child had at least some survival skills, but could he really sustain himself and another person for 2 years? A puff of smoke appeared out of nowhere before the Sanin could follow that gloomy line of thought, and when it cleared, he found a toad sitting in his room with a scroll fastened to its back. Jiraiya extended her hand and took the scroll away. He opened it and started reading with trembling hands. He went over the message 3 times. The sage quickly realized that his old sensei's words carried a secret meaning, even though the message itself didn't say much. The text merely read, Foundling's departure from the nest proves that the flame burning amongst the leaves burns brightly within him. Jiraiya grinned slowly as he read the scroll again and again, recalling all the times his old sensei had mentioned the flame burning among the leaves. His smile vanished as he realized that his worst fears had been realized, and the message became evident to him once he grasped what that meant. At the ripe age of 8, his godson was lost in the wilderness with a young girl his own age who was depending on him to keep her safe and alive. Jiraiya growled a little. He detested being powerless, and for at least 17 months, there was nothing he could do to help these two. The old man's helplessness had caused him to scold himself at least 1,000 times in the past 3 weeks. He rhetorically questioned the toad, "What am I supposed to do?" It answered with a croak. "Yeah, that's what I thought." He started to pace erratically again, muttering to himself as he nearly screamed in exasperation. He whispered, "Please, Naruto, please be safe," as he began to cry in frustration. Naruto opened his eyes slowly as he woke up. He was surprised to discover that the darkness pervaded his surroundings. He became aware that he was moving as his eyes gradually adapted to the darkness. The ground beneath him was trembling and obviously moving. When he could see a little better, he realized he was in some kind of covered wagon. He turned to look at Hinata, who was still sleeping next to him. He was surprised she was still asleep, given the rocking and bouncing of the wagon and the heat, which he had soon discovered was far higher than he was used to when he woke up. He attempted to shake her awake by reaching over. He assumed that her sleep was somehow induced by jutsu when she showed no reaction. "We've been kidnapped," he reflected. Naruto began to think frantically after experiencing a brief panic attack and taking deep breaths to calm himself. He laughed wryly to himself at the thought, "Okay, we've been kidnapped. What are you going to do about it, Naruto?" The blonde then had another idea. "What can I do? I'm just a kid, after all." His anger grew as he considered this, eventually reaching a boiling point. "Wait a minute. I took Hinata into my home, then we both ran away from the village to get away from her clan. All that just to get kidnapped by someone out in the middle of nowhere? Oh, hell no," he said. The blonde was suddenly covered in a red, fox-like shroud with a single tail as he grew increasingly enraged at the idea of him and Hinata being captured in this manner. The wagon jolted into rapid motion as a result of his loud roar, which startled the oxen, pulling it into running. Naruto landed and rolled across the ground after the abrupt acceleration sent him flying out the back of the wagon. He was so furious that he barely noticed that he was rolling across the sand. The next thing he knew, he was sprinting for the wagon, determined to keep Hinata by his side. After the driver regained control of the oxen, Naruto managed to catch up with the wagon a few minutes later. 4 men were peering into the back of the now still wagon when he arrived. He heard one of them say, "At least we still have her. She's the one that's really worth the big money. The other one wasn't worth much anyway." He reflected, so, they mean to sell her, do they? I think not, on his mind. He roared once more and charged at the 4 men. When they saw him approaching, they turned and tried to avoid him. However, Naruto's initial attack, a swipe of his now claw-like hand, struck the man across the neck, instantly killing him, so it was too late for one of them. Uncertain of what to anticipate, the 3 men who were left took up defensive positions a short distance from Naruto. The boy in the red cloak snarled and ran toward them, murder in his eyes, which were now red with fox-like slits in the pupils. Pulling kunai, the 3 men readied themselves for self-defense. In his subsequent attack, Naruto severed one of the men's hands. While he was still concentrating on that one, the other 2 attacked from behind, but the red shroud deflected their blows. With waves of anger erupting from him, Naruto turned on the 2 men behind him and used one hand to attack each of them. Both strikes were successful, instantly beheading the 2 men. The other man attempted to attack Naruto from behind, but he was also killed when the tail of his cloak moved with lightning speed and impaled the man through the chest. Naruto was now covered in blood, but it wasn't his own. Breathing heavily, he turned to face the wagon and noticed Hinata getting out and massaging her eyes. After gasping at the sight of Naruto, Hinata rushed to check on him. When Naruto realized Hinata was awake and unharmed, he grinned a little, sighed, and collapsed to the ground, unconscious. A few moments later, the red chakra returned to his body. Hinata was so terrified that Naruto might be dead that she froze for a second before running as fast as she could to him after he fell to the ground. She was much more at ease when she arrived and discovered that the blood on him was not her own. Hinata inhaled deeply, then raised Naruto's body and successfully returned it to the wagon. She was determined to get him into the shade because she knew that leaving him outside in the intense heat of the day would not benefit him. After that, Hinata searched the wagon and discovered everything they owned hidden in a back corner. She also discovered plenty of supplies, rations, weapons, and other items, as well as several bags of feed for the oxen. She told herself, "I'm not sure what happened, but it might turn out to be a good thing." Naruto was in his mindscape when Hinata was assessing the contents of the wagon. "What have I done?" he cried, falling to his knees. It had taken him a few moments to realize that he had just killed 4 men, but once he did, he had fallen into a despair that was unlike anything he had ever experienced. Now, how could anyone trust him? How could he ever be loved? How could anyone possibly tolerate his presence? Naruto's mindscape was filled with a loud voice. It exclaimed, "I'm so proud of you. You have finally shown that you are willing to do what it takes." Through a set of bars, Naruto saw a large, smiling red fox staring up at him. He said, "Who are you?" The fox arched an eyebrow, as if in surprise or curiosity. "Who am I? I'm the 9-tailed fox, of course," it called back, sounding only slightly irritated. Naruto said, "That can't be. The 4th Hokage killed the 9-tailed fox. Now tell me the truth, who are you?" The fox let out a loud laugh. It said, "Killed the 9-tailed fox? That can't be. You can't kill any of the tailed beasts. I'd have thought even you would know that." "No, he didn't kill me, he just sealed me in you. In any case, you know it now, and, whether you want to believe it or not, I am the 9-tailed fox." Naruto gave a shrug. He said, "Whatever, I don't really care," as he turned away from the fox. "It's not like anyone could ever love me now. I'm a killer." The fox behind him said, "I can." Naruto turned to the fox, mistrust in his eyes. "I'm a killer, too, after all. Why would I hold that against you?" After giving that some thought, Naruto nodded. He remarked, "That's true, I suppose. Still, even then, I'll spend the rest of my life alone now. I'm not worthy of being loved." "If they won't love you, why should you care about them? Screw them all," the fox said, beaming broadly. Naruto gave a headshake. The boy was clearly on the edge of complete despair because of the sadness in his voice as he said, "No, I won't hurt them. I'll just live alone." The fox snarled. "Why would you forgive them? They hate you and look down on you. Why not take your revenge?" it demanded. Naruto felt himself being pushed out of his mindscape just as he was about to reply. He was awake in a matter of moments, leaving the fox behind, content with the knowledge that it had at least provided the blonde with some food for thought. Naruto was shocked to discover that he was no longer on the ground outside when he opened his eyes. Apparently, he was back in the wagon's bed instead. He looked around and saw Hinata sitting close by, sorting through a pile of something, though he couldn't tell exactly what she was doing from where he was. When Hinata heard Naruto moving, she turned to smile at him. "Oh, Naruto. she exclaimed as she passed him. I'm glad you're awake. Are you all right? Naruto sat up and moved slightly away from Hinata. Slowly, I'm fine, he said. A sigh of relief left Hinata's throat. When I saw you covered in all that blood, she continued, I was so scared. Naruto's eyes ached as he gazed at her. He turned away from her, not wanting her to see the hurt her words had caused him. Of course you were scared, he said in an emotionless voice. I'm a killer, you had every reason to be afraid of me. When Hinata realized what he believed she meant, he gasped. No, Naruto, I'm not afraid of you. I was scared for you. I thought you were hurt. Or worse. I was terrified of losing you, she said softly as she approached him and wrapped her arms around him from behind. Naruto glanced over his shoulder at Hinata. He questioned, but how could that be? I'm a killer. I slaughtered those 4 men. I tore them apart and killed them. I did that, Hinata. How can you care for me after that? With a gentle smile, Hinata acknowledged the blonde's intense concern that he would lose her. With deliberate word choice, she said, Naruto, why did you kill them? After giving it some consideration, Naruto responded, I killed them to protect you. They were going to sell you, and I wasn't going to let that happen to you. Hinata grinned. Yet again, you've saved me, she said. Leaning in, she gave him a gentle peck on the cheek. My hero. At last, Naruto grinned. He turned around and gave Hinata a slow embrace, and she put her arms around Naruto and gave him a gentle back rub. Finally expressing his anguish, Naruto sobbed softly on Hinata's shoulder. With calming noises in his ear, Hinata held him close. Before long, the blonde had let out a cry, and the two just sat together, embracing each other and reaffirming their love for each other. The two parted ways after some time. Looking around the wagon once more, Naruto saw what Hinata had found some time before. The wagon was stocked with food for the team of oxen pulling it as well as for the people who had been driving it. Hinata replied, I've been going through all this stuff, and there's enough here for us to live on for quite some time. There's even plenty of kunai, shuriken, ninja wire, and all kinds of tags. I was separating the tags into different kinds when you woke up. She pointed to piles of tags, which Naruto saw. There was a small mountain of explosive tags, a nice pile of sealing tags, and a smaller pile of chakra. Sealing tags. Additionally, there were a few tags that were still unmarked and even a few decoy tags. As Hinata had said, there were enormous stacks of shuriken and kunai beyond those. They walked to the location where Hinata had been employed. They proceeded to separate them after Naruto retrieved a stack of his own unsorted tags. For a few moments, they were enveloped in a friendly silence. Naruto started to reflect on what he had witnessed while unconscious as he put a chakra, sealing tag on its assigned pile. He continued to sort tags, but his attention was only half on the task at hand. He spent the remainder of it considering what he ought to do in light of what he had discovered. It seems that he was sealed with the 9-tailed fox. Naturally, being aware of this clarified a lot of the way he had been treated in the village. However, it also presented him with a whole new dilemma. He knew he had to tell Hinata. If she was going to spend a lot of time alone with him in the middle of nowhere, as she probably was, it wouldn't be appropriate to keep such a secret from her. He decided to go back to the tags after he sighed and told himself, the longer I wait, the harder it will be to tell her. I might as well just get it over with and tell her tonight. Knowing that Naruto would let her know when he was ready, Hinata chose not to bring up the fact that he had appeared preoccupied for some time. It was getting close to sunset by the time they had completed sorting the tags into their individual piles. Naruto's nerves were frayed and he was in a slightly touchy mood because he had been thinking about what he was going to tell Hinata all that time. They dug through the wagon and found enough wood and tinder to start a small fire. They then rummaged through the wagon's food supply. Regretfully, there wasn't much that was truly useful. In one way or another, most of the food was completely spoiled. After getting rid of that, they discovered they had enough supplies for a week at most. Naruto snarled in annoyance. He wasn't sure what exactly was bothering him, but this circumstance was making his already strained nerves worse. Naruto sighed and dug around until he located the box he had taken from his apartment before heading out. He came back an hour later, looking much more composed. Hinata was curious about him and replied, I was setting some traps. I found some tracks out there that look like they were left by relatively small animals, and I think I'll be able to catch some for us. It might not be much, but every little bit helps, right? Hinata grinned. Her response was, yes, that's very true. She thought for a moment, I wonder what kind of animals live out here. She was informed by Naruto that, lizards, I think, at least, that's what the tracks looked like. Hinata laughed. She remarked, I've never had lizard before, grinning a little. Naruto laughed. Telling her, I haven't, either. Well, I'm always open to new things, and I'm sure you'll find some way to make it tasty. Hinata shook her head and blushed slightly. I appreciate the vote of confidence, she stated, but I don't know how much I'll be able to do with what we have here. These guys apparently didn't think spices and such for cooking were worth packing, so I don't have much of anything. Naruto let out a sigh. And I doubt we have much water, either, do we? Replied he. Once more, Hinata shook her head. There's enough for us and the oxen for maybe 2 weeks at the most, she stated. And what we have isn't exactly the freshest, either. Naruto sighed and said, everything was going so well, now look at us, stuck in the desert with just a wagon, some oxen, and enough food and water to live for maybe 2 weeks at the most. Reaching out, Hinata placed a hand on his shoulder. Hey, at least we're still together, she said. Naruto let out a sigh. Pulling Hinata gently in front of him, he said, yeah, that's true. Hinata, there's something I have to tell you, allowing him to gaze into her eyes. Hinata nodded and smiled reassuringly at him. When I was unconscious. I'm not sure how, but I went into my own mind. It was like I was in a boiler room or something. My Mindscape, I guess you could call it. Hinata nodded once more, her gaze intent. The thing is, I wasn't alone. There was a huge cage in there. And in that cage, I saw the 9-tailed fox. He told me the 4th Hokage didn't kill him, saying it's impossible to kill a tailed beast, and that the 4th sealed him into me. Apparently, me being born the day the fox attacked was no coincidence. After considering what she had been told, Hinata turned on her Byakugan. Something had to be visible to her. She noticed that Naruto had 2 distinct chakras inside his body while wearing her Byakugan. Everyone she knew had the typical bright blue chakra, but there was also a deep red chakra that seemed to be accompanied by an evil force. She reasoned, that must be the 9-tailed fox's chakra. I guess that's why everyone back in the village ignored you, huh? She said to Naruto, who nodded, awaiting her reaction. Hinata grinned. She approached Naruto and put her arms around him after saying, I saw you with my Byakugan. Your body has 2 chakras. The fox's chakra is within you, that's true, but it's not your own. Your own chakra is the same as mine. That tells me that you're not the fox, no matter what the villagers think. Unaware that he was holding his breath, Naruto gave her a hug in return. The words, thank you, Hinata, he inhaled deeply before telling her, I'm so glad you accepted me. I was really afraid you wouldn't. Hinata took a step back and turned to face Naruto. How could I ever reject my hero? She smiled cheekily. Naruto couldn't resist grinning in return. Thank you, he repeated to her. It was growing dark by this point. After climbing into the wagon, Hinata collected some meat for their meal. The 2 ate in silence as she cooked it over the fire they had previously built. Hinata was simply relishing the cozy silence between them while Naruto was too preoccupied with observing her and reflecting on everything that had transpired that day to engage in conversation. With a slight grin, Hinata thought, it's been a crazy few weeks, what with Naruto and me leaving the village and living out here and all, but I'm still glad he and I met. Observing the smile on Hinata's face, Naruto said softly, what are you thinking? Hinata shared her thoughts with him, and he replied, yeah, me, too. After eating, the 2 lay down next to each other on the sand and gazed up at the sky, which was getting darker by the minute. After approaching Naruto, Hinata put her head on his shoulder. The 2 watched the stars come out and grinned, happy to have each other. Hinata said, it's nice out here, in a drowsy voice. It's peaceful. Naruto gave a nod. Yeah, I'd always thought the desert would be different from this, somehow. It's a little lonely, but it's mostly just peaceful out here. It really is. Nice, he laughed. Naruto put one arm around the girl after Hinata's drowsy giggles, and before long, both of them were dozing off beneath the stars. Naruto and Hinata completed inventorying the wagon's contents the next day. Naruto found some clothing that would fit both of them, and Hinata discovered a map and compass somewhere. They both needed their own clothes, which their captors had apparently left behind. Naruto put his orange jumpsuit away and changed into the rather plain clothes he had discovered. They weren't particularly pretty, but they were clean and reasonably comfortable. Though Hinata didn't mind, she thought her clothes were a little too big. She was used to it because her own clothes were also baggy. She thought she could put up with the fact that the clothing she was wearing was a little scratchy. After getting dressed, the 2 fed the oxen and located some ration bars for breakfast. Then, using the map and compass she had discovered, Hinata attempted to locate them. Regretfully, the desert appeared the same from every angle. Based on the wagon's tracks, she was able to determine that they had initially been traveling north. But beyond that, she discovered that they were no more oriented than they had been prior to discovering the map. After considering their options, she concluded that going east would only lead them back to the Land of Fire and would not be very helpful. She immediately concluded that heading west would be the most sensible course of action for them, as heading south would only take them to the ocean, while heading north would take them to the Land of Earth. That should take them to the village hidden in the sand, hopefully. At least they could be certain of finding supplies there. Perhaps they could even spend some time there in safety. After all, the Land of Fire and the Land of Wind were allies. It had been rumored a while ago that a monster lived there, but she didn't believe it. Rumors were nearly always inflated, she told herself. Well, even if we're not due east of the village, at least we should come close enough to it to be able to see it, she was thinking. I just hope we're not west of the village. That would be a disaster. Turning to Naruto, she replied, I think we should head west. There's a village in the desert, the village hidden in the sand, and I'm pretty sure we're east of there. I'm sure we can get supplies there at the very least. And maybe we can even live there safely for a while. I don't know about you, but I'd rather not spend any more time out here in the wilderness than necessary. Naruto gave a nod. Hinata pointed and the two climbed into the wagon's driver's seat. That's true enough. All right, Hinata, let's get going. Which way is west? Hinata said. After some effort, they were able to get the oxen moving in the proper direction. The Hiruzen was reading a report he had received from one of his Anbu squads as Naruto and Hinata set out across the desert to the west. They had just gotten back from a trip. They went to investigate the chakra spike they had experienced on the way back to the village. To put it mildly, what they had discovered was not exactly consoling. They believed that two people had been camping there for a while because they discovered the remnants of a campsite. However, the site was deserted after a group of at least 3 other people ran roughshod over it before they arrived. If he had to guess, the campsite had likely belonged to Naruto and Hinata, and the chakra spike they described sounded like a mid-level genjutsu. He sighed and said to himself, as much as I hate to, I have to tell Jiraiya about this. He took out a scroll and a quill pen, wrote a short note to Jiraiya, and called a monkey to deliver it. He gave the scroll to the monkey and instructed him to bring it to Jiraiya. After giving him a salute, the monkey vanished in a cloud of smoke. Naruto, Hiruzen sighed, you had better be safe out there. I could never face your father if you died. Naruto by mid-afternoon, Naruto and Hinata had finally found their way to the hidden sand village, despite the fact that it had taken them several hours. Telling the guards that their parents were traveling merchants who had been attacked and killed in the desert, they were able to lead their team of oxen to the main gate and gain entry. Hinata had disguised herself as blind in order to hide her eyes. It worked, much to her surprise. The two heard voices yelling and saw children fleeing from something they couldn't see as they were leaving the stables where they had been instructed to leave their oxen. Inquisitive, the two headed for where the kids were afraid. They soon discovered what had frightened them. It was a boy. At first, neither of them could find anything particularly frightening about him because he appeared to be their own age. He had the reddest hair they had ever seen, pale blue eyes, and black rings around his eyes that gave the impression that he had not slept for days. The word, love, was written in red kanji on his forehead. It took them both a moment to realize that it was a scar rather than writing. The boy was carrying what appeared to be some sort of gourd on his back. Then his eyes were seen by the two. Those eyes were filled with madness. They recognized that this boy was different from the majority of the kids they knew. He was something else. He was not a child. Then they noticed another thing. The anguish of betrayal and loneliness was visible in those pale eyes. The two lonely kids came to a realization at that moment. This boy was similar to them because they could see the same pain in his eyes that they were aware was present in their own. They wondered who this boy was and if their eyes would ever resemble his. Naruto and Hinata smiled kindly at the redhead who was frightening everyone in their vicinity. Hi there, Naruto said with a smile. At last, the redhead turned to face the two individuals who were coming toward him fearlessly. Inquiringly, are you talking to me? Naruto gave a nod. Who are you? Naruto answered, this is my friend, Hinata, and I'm Naruto. And you? My name is Gaara, returned the boy. After a moment when neither of them appeared to recognize his name, he said, why aren't you afraid of me? You do know who I am, don't you? Never heard of you, said Naruto, a little blithely. Hinata asked, why should we have heard of you? As Gaara appeared shocked by this. Gaara responded, I'm the monster of the sand, in a dejected tone. After years of being told he was a monster, he had finally come to believe it, even though it had taken years. Naruto was all too familiar with that feeling and thought. He responded, no you aren't, with absolutely no hesitation in his voice. Gaara's eyes widened. What do you mean? Of course I am. Everyone in town is afraid of me, and I've even killed people before. How could I not be the monster? He replied. I know you aren't because I'm just like you, Naruto answered. Everyone in my village ignored me and treated me like some kind of monster, but then I found out I'm not a monster. I just have one sealed inside me. I bet you do, too. Gaara thought about it. He thought, a monster sealed inside me. He asked the raven-haired girl, who had only spoken once, you knew of this, and you're still with him. But then that would mean, mother, is a monster? Could it be that that isn't my mother but the monster everyone believes I am? This boy is saying he has one in him, too. Maybe it's true. Grinning, Hinata clasped Naruto's hand. She responded joyfully, he's my hero. I don't care what he has inside him, I'll always be at his side. Gaara was taken aback. His tone betrayed his confusion as he asked, he's a monster, a killer, and you still love him? Hinata gave a nod. But, why? Hinata let out a sigh. It doesn't matter to me what's inside him or that he's killed. I know who he is and why he does the things he does, and that's what matters to me. He would only kill if he had to defend something precious to him, and the creature inside him doesn't change the fact that he's still Naruto Uzumaki, my hero, she said with assurance. Gaara retorted, so, you mean I'm not doomed to be alone forever? Hinata grinned. I'm sure you'll find someone someday, Gaara. Just don't let yourself turn to hate and anger. Be the best person you can be, and I'm sure someone will come to love you someday, she said to him. After giving this some thought, Gaara decided to just put it away for the time being. He remarked, you said you're not from here. What are you two doing here, then? Naruto and Hinata spent almost an hour explaining their experiences that led them to the hidden sand village. Aside from omitting some information about the Hyuga clan because they didn't want to reveal Hinata's identity to the boy just yet and avoiding giving too much information about their kidnapping, they were as open and truthful as they could be. Hinata concluded, that's when we came here. We need to get some supplies for ourselves and our oxen so that we can continue our journey. Gaara considered everything he had been told. I see, he muttered. Naruto and Hinata nodded and grinned before following Gaara as she turned and went toward the village's main street. Well, if you'll come with me, I'll help you find the supplies you need. The villagers might be afraid of me, but that hasn't stopped me from learning my way around this place. Jiraiya found himself pacing his hotel room nervously for the third time in the past month. His old sensei had sent him another message about his godson and the young girl who was accompanying him. Of all the messages he had received, this one was by far the most upsetting. Jiraiya was able to decipher the message, which only stated, Foundling's campsite found trampled. Foundling and baggage missing. Current location and condition unknown. Naruto had been abducted along with his friend. He exclaimed, oh, Minato, Kushina, what am I supposed to do? With a determined expression on his face, the Toad Sage resumed his pacing and asked, I know you two would kill me if anything happened to that brat, but how can I help him now? Okay, it's been a month now since he left. If I'm not finished with my mission and with those two in a year, I'll hand in my headband, he thought to himself. Having made up his mind, he began to scrutinize every aspect of his mission schedule. Eventually, he realized that there was only one chance to expedite things in order to accommodate the new schedule he had established for himself. Even though it was risky and probably foolish, he was willing to risk everything to be with those two sooner. There, his thoughts were. After making the decision, the man collapsed onto his hotel bed and closed his eyes. If I can just stick to that, I'll be with them in a year, maybe even less. It's still not perfect, but it'll just have to do. Even though it was early afternoon and not late, he was completely worn out. The man's final thought before falling asleep was, please, just be safe until I can get there, Naruto. Naruto's parents' irate gazes plagued his dreams. The Hiruzen the third Hokage let out a long sigh. Naruto and Hinata had been seen entering the hidden sand village, according to a scroll he had just received. The reason they had gotten away with it was because one of his spies had been on duty at the main gate of the village when the two entered using their implausible story. The fact that they were safe was a great relief, but this additional information was a little strange. Were the two operating an ox cart? That didn't seem very logical. How could they possibly obtain an ox cart? Strangely enough, though, the man was positive that the two were who he claimed they were. The Hokage had to concur that this was Naruto's hair and whiskers and Hinata's eyes because he had described them so vividly. An ox cart, though? How on earth did they obtain that? However, knowing they were safe and seemingly free was a relief. They must have either escaped their captors or been released because the man claimed that only the two of them had entered the sand village. While the latter seemed unlikely, if not outright impossible, the former left the Hokage wondering how. It seemed unlikely to him that Hinata in particular would be simply released, as he was fairly certain the two had been captured as part of someone's attempt to make money off of her by Kugan. The cart continued to be perplexed. Nevertheless, he felt he should just be happy that they were safe and alive and that their circumstances appeared to have improved. With another sigh, he grabbed a brush and composed a fresh letter to his former pupil. While attempting to determine where Naruto or Hinata would have obtained a freaking ox cart, he summoned a small monkey to deliver the scroll and then returned to his paperwork. A puff of smoke filled Jiraiya's room, and he looked up in surprise. A monkey holding a scroll was visible when it cleared, and it gave it to Jiraiya before disappearing in a second cloud of smoke. Jiraiya read from it, "Foundling has landed in a sandy nest. Was seen with an ox cart. Shadow's desert eyes report foundling as well." Jiraiya quickly read the message 3 times. He understood the first and third lines perfectly. A spy had seen Naruto in the sand village and reported that he was doing well. But that second line, an ox cart, Jiraiya considered that for a few minutes before concluding that it must be code for something. Where else would 28-year-olds get an ox cart, after all? However, what on earth was that code for if it existed? That one would defy all the spymaster's understanding of codes and ciphers. In the end, Jiraiya was forced to acknowledge that his sensei had written one uncoded line for whatever reason. However, that led him back to his initial query. How could they possibly obtain an ox cart? He questioned the wall. "Naruto, what in the world have you gotten yourself into out there? I just hope you know what you're doing. Please, be safe, Naruto. Please." When Naruto saw that the price of all the supplies he had bought hadn't even significantly depleted his finances, he grinned in mild surprise. When he remembered the box he had stored in his closet for years, he grinned. He told himself, "It's a good thing I kept that," as he paid for the final few items he and Hinata would require. "Thank you, Gaara, you've been most helpful," Naruto said, turning to face Gaara. "But now that we have our supplies, Hinata and I really should move on." Gaara appeared stunned by this. "Nonsense," the redhead said, turning to face the sky. "You two will both join me and my family for dinner and spend the night at my home. Tomorrow you can make your plans and decide when to leave." Naruto was about to object when Gaara said, "I don't know how many nights you've spent in the desert, but it can be absolutely frigid sometimes. It's going to be cold tonight, and I'm sure you'd be warmer and more comfortable in one of the rooms at my home than out there on the sand." The boy wasn't sure if it would be cold, but he was desperate to prevent Naruto and Hinata from leaving just yet. Naruto looked over at Hinata. He stated, "He's got a point." Hinata gave a nod. "Yeah, and it would feel so good to sleep in a bed again," she replied. She then added, blushing a little, "even if it is only for one night." Naruto laughed. Hinata was correct. Sleeping in a bed once more would be pleasant. He hadn't given it much thought until then, but spending a month camping non-stop can make you miss the comforts of home. "All right, Gaara. We thank you for your hospitality, and we'll be glad to stay with you for tonight. We really should move on tomorrow, though," Naruto said, grinning as he returned his focus to Gaara. Although Gaara appeared a little sad that they would be leaving so quickly, he wasn't going to gripe about their staying for the time being. In actuality, Gaara had to acknowledge that, considering his burden and the way his father had been treating him lately, the Sand Village was probably not the safest place for Naruto to be. He said simply, "Come with me," not wanting to convey his level of anxiety. And he turned, leading his 2 companions? Friends? He didn't want them to go just yet because he didn't know what they were yet. In any case, he guided them to his house. Naruto was struck by how enormous Gaara's house was. It was by far the biggest house they had seen since coming to the Sand Village, and it was clearly very costly. "Nice place," he said with awe in his voice. "Sincerely, I am happy you approve," Gaara said. "My siblings should be here, so we can all have dinner shortly." This was somewhat surprising to Hinata. "You have siblings? You never mentioned them before," she responded. "Yes," Gaara replied. "I am the youngest of 3. My older brother, Kankuro, and my sister, Temari, should be here. Come in." He was followed into his house by Naruto and Hinata. After leaving them to remove their shoes and other belongings, Gaara set out to find his siblings. Naruto and Hinata took off their shoes and surveyed the living room where they were. One wall had a long couch, and the majority of the floor was covered by a large rug, with a coffee table in the middle. They noticed a number of books scattered carelessly on the table. One of them was the book Naruto was reading the evening he met Hinata. Hinata identified some of them as series she herself enjoyed. Then, among all the other books, they both noticed an orange one lying there. Although neither of them was familiar with it, they could both clearly see it because of its orange cover. When Gaara came back with 2 individuals who must have been his siblings, Hinata was thinking about picking up the strange orange book. Hinata noticed that Temari was carrying a fan and that her blonde hair was tied up in 4 ponytails, resembling a peculiar variation of the Nara men's preferred hairstyle. wearing a hooded outfit that gave his head a slight cat-like appearance. Kankuro was walking around with a small puppet that he was manipulating to make it do a rather silly dance. Temari was the first to speak. She said, "So, who are your visitors, Gaara?" Gaara replied, "This is Naruto and Hinata," pointing to each as he uttered their names. "They're not from here, and they needed some help getting supplies so they could continue their journey. I invited them to join us for the night so they could more easily plan their next move." Temari and Kankuro appeared taken aback by Gaara's normal behavior. Temari's gaze shifted to Hinata. "Would you mind helping me in the kitchen?" she said. Hinata grinned. Her response was, "Not at all, I'd be glad to start dinner." The two girls vanished into the kitchen. After saying, "I will get your room prepared for you," Gaara went upstairs. Kankuro looked over at Naruto. Showing where Gaara had disappeared, he said, "You do know what he is, don't you?" Naruto gave Kankuro a blank stare. "I mean, you do know he's a Jinchuriki, right?" Naruto gave a snort. Kankuro nodded angrily. "You mean that he has a monster inside him?" Simply, "Yeah, I know," he replied. Kankuro exclaimed, "And you're not afraid of him?" Naruto questioned, "Why in the world would I be afraid of him?" He continued, "After all, I have a monster in me, too. And I'm pretty sure mine is bigger." It surprised Kankuro. He questioned, "You're like Gaara?" "Well, if you mean that we both have monsters sealed within us, yeah. If you mean that we've both spent most of our lives alone, yeah. If you mean that we're both homicidal maniacs, no, and I don't think Gaara will be, either, after this," Naruto said with a smile. Over the past few years, Gaara had told him and Hinata about the numerous times he had had to kill in order to survive. It was quite depressing as well as a little frightening. Kankuro remarked, "I did notice he seemed different." Naruto let out a sigh. "Just treat him like any other sibling would want to be treated, and I really don't think you'll have to worry about him," said the father. Temari had been asking Hinata essentially the same question in the meantime. "Yeah, I know about Gaara's burden, and I know how he's had to kill so many times. He told us while we were walking around the village together earlier," Hinata said with a smile. Temari was taken aback. Had Gaara told them? Had they not noticed it? "And you're not afraid of him?" Hinata chuckled. "Of course not. Naruto has a monster sealed inside him, too, and I'm not afraid of him, so why would I be afraid of Gaara?" Now Temari was startled. She questioned, "Naruto is a Jinchuriki?" Hinata gave a nod. After hearing about Naruto's beast, she connected the dots after having heard the term once before. "How can you be so calm around him?" Hinata declared, "He'd never hurt me." Hinata shivered a little as she finally let the horror of what she had seen sink in. "In fact, he's already killed to protect me. It was, actually really scary seeing the aftermath of what he did, but I know he did it for me, so I can't be afraid of him for doing it." Temari smiled kindly at the smaller girl and put an arm around her shoulders. "I know how you feel. I still remember the first time I saw what Gaara can do. It's impressive, but scary," she replied. "If he can just harness that power and be convinced to use it to protect the village, I don't think any of us will ever need to fear anything again." Hinata grinned. "That's exactly how I feel about Naruto. The thing is, he's already determined to be Hokage and uses his power to protect the village. I just hope one day the village will see him as I do, as our hero," she said gently. Temari grinned. She teased, "Wow. You've really got it bad for that goofy kid, huh?" Hinata's cheeks turned scarlet. "What do you mean?" she inquired, attempting to appear uninformed. Hinata sighed when Temari simply shot her a knowing glance. "Yeah, I do. How could I not, though? He's already saved me from becoming a prisoner of my clan and from being kidnapped, and I haven't even known him 2 months yet. He's my hero, and I'm the luckiest girl in the world just knowing him." Temari grinned once more. "I'm happy for you, Hinata. I just hope Gaara finds someone like you someday." Hinata giggled a little. "If he follows Naruto's example, I'm sure you will." "Naruto found me, after all," she replied, her eyes glimmering with pride. "And I'm sure whoever it is, she'll be just as lucky to have Gaara as I am to have Naruto." Hinata smiled as she continued. Temari let out a sigh. "I hope you're right, Hinata," she acknowledged. The two girls then focused on preparing dinner for everyone. Naruto and Hinata were getting ready to leave the sand village with their cart and oxen early the following morning. They knew they needed to move on, even though they had enjoyed spending the evening with Gaara and his siblings. Naruto said, "All right," after their team was reattached. "Are you ready, Hinata?" With a blank expression, Hinata nodded. She was already back to being the blind girl they had pretended to be in order to enter the village. They had made the decision to evade suspicion by using the same cover story to escape again. They received a surprise just as they were about to put their team on the road that led out of the village. Gaara rushed toward them. Naruto said, "Oh, hey, Gaara," in a pleasant tone. "What's up?" Demanding, "Take me with you," Gaara said. Naruto let out a startled gasp. That was the last thing he thought Gaara would say. Naruto looked from Gaara to Hinata, frantically trying to think of an excuse. After a moment, he said, We can't take you with us, Gaara. We could start a war if we did that, especially with you being a Jinchuriki and the son of the Kazekage and all that. It's just not something we can do." After giving this some thought, Gaara shook his head. "My father has spent the last 2 years trying constantly to kill me. My own siblings are afraid of me, and the villagers all hate me. This isn't a home to me. I have to take the chance and go, now. Please, take me with you," he said, his voice almost beseeching. Then, to the utter astonishment of both Naruto and Gaara, Temari and Kankuro appeared out of nowhere. They had been hiding close by, out of sight of Gaara, Naruto, and Hinata. After giving herself a quick reprimand for letting her guard down, Hinata decided she could afford to forgive herself this time because they were in a reasonably safe location. Furthermore, Temari and Kankuro had stated unequivocally that they did not intend to harm her or Naruto. Temari was the first to speak. With a simple, "Take him with you, Naruto," she said. Naruto gave her a startled look. She then turned to Gaara and said, "Kankuro and I love you, Gaara. We only want what's best for you, and we talked it over last night and we believe that spending some time away from the village is exactly what you need." Naruto inhaled deeply. "Temari, you have to understand, there are many powerful shinobi who are after Hinata and me. I'm not sure exactly what they want, but all of them want either her or me, either dead or enslaved. If Gaara comes with us, he'll be in grave danger every step of the way. That can't be better than being here," he said after giving it some thought. Temari shook her head and laughed. This time, Kankuro was the one to speak. "What Gaara said is true, for the most part. Father has been trying to kill him for some time now. He's been in grave danger every moment of every day for over 2 years. Going with you will probably put him in less danger than if he were here, actually. And besides, as long as you're in the desert, having Gaara with you will make you darn near invincible with his control over the sand." Naruto gave this careful thought. Yes, they were right. It would undoubtedly be advantageous to have a Jinchuriki and someone as strong as Gaara accompany you. There was definitely strength in numbers, especially considering everyone who was actively or passively pursuing them. However, if they brought Gaara along without the Kazecage's consent, they might start a conflict between the leaf and sand. Naruto turned to face Temari and started to speak, but Hinata spoke before him. "You do have a point, but still, we can't risk the leaf and sand going to war over something like this. It just wouldn't be wise, and I really don't think either Naruto or I could live with ourselves if our villages went to war over something we did. If the Kazekage gave his approval, it would be a different story, but he hasn't done that so far as we know," she continued. It was the most Hinata had ever said all at once, and Naruto stared at her in shock. Kankuro and Temari exchanged glances and nodded. Naruto was given a small scroll by Kankuro as he approached him and Hinata. Naruto discovered a letter inside when he opened it. It said, "If anyone ever comes along who is willing to take Gaara away from the village hidden in the sand, give this to them. To you, reader, I will only say this. If you cannot instill within Gaara a will to protect the people and shinobi of the sand village, please, do everyone a favor and kill him. If you are unable to do this, at least keep him away from the sand village for the rest of his life." The Kazekage signed the document. After giving the letter a fierce look, Naruto gave it to Hinata. After slowly reading it twice, she glared at it before taking out a match and lighting the scroll on fire. "Simply put, we would never do that," she said. "The one favor we will ever do your Kazekage is to never tell Gaara what that said. That said, though, the contents of that do change things. We will take Gaara with us for now." Naruto agreed with what she said. Gaara gazed at them intently. He blinked frantically to keep the tears from streaming from his eyes. He said, "Thank you both so much," after a brief pause. Despite his best efforts to stop them, the tears started to fall from his eyes. On the ox cart, he mounted. Naruto responded, "Don't you have anything you want to bring with you, Gaara?" The gourd was patted on the back by the redhead. "I have my sand, and there's nothing else in this village I would want to carry around with me." Hinata got off the cart and dragged Kankuro and Temari away. She said, "Never forget him." They gave a nod. "We'll do our best to make him into the shinobi he should be. If at all possible, he will be back to you in about a year. At worst, we'll do our best to have him back to you in time to become a full-fledged shinobi in a few years. Since you two are probably the only ones in the village who aren't afraid of him, you'll have to be his teammates, so Please, wait for him. With tears in her eyes, Temari gave a serious nod. We will, I promise you, Hinata. We'd wait for him forever if we had to. He is our brother after all, she replied. Kankuro simply indicated his agreement with a nod. Can I say goodbye to him? Temari asked, taking a deep, trembling breath. Hinata grinned. She exclaimed joyfully, we wouldn't have it any other way. As Temari and Kankuro stepped forward and each took one of Gaara's hands, Hinata climbed back into the ox cart. Despite the tears in her eyes, Temari tried her hardest to smile at Gaara. With a stutter, she said, we'll be here when you get back, little brother, don't forget us. After initially struggling to speak, Kankuro cleared his throat and uttered, we'll miss you, Gaara. I will come back when I am ready. Be patient, wait for me, and one day I will return, Gaara said, giving his siblings one of the first genuine smiles he had given anyone in his house in well over a year. He then squeezed their hands in his small ones. Both Temari and Kankuro gave their brother genuine smiles. They were pleased for him. Nevertheless, both of them were crying. They were aware that they would miss their younger brother. As they watched Naruto and Hinata steer their oxen back onto the road leading out of the sand village, Temari put an arm around Kankuro and whispered, this is for the best. He needs this. When he returns to us, I bet he's a totally new person. Kankuro let out a sigh. You're right, Temari. I know you are. But still, I'm gonna miss him. Temari gave a wistful laugh. Simply, me, too, she said. Me, too. Gaara had scaled to the rear of the ox cart and was observing his siblings as they disappeared from view. After they left, he moved to the front and sat next to his two new friends. He didn't turn around again. The Hiruzen reading the most recent message from his spy in the sand village, Hiruzen let out a sigh. When Naruto and Hinata left that village, they had the Kage's son with them. To make matters worse, the boy was Shukaku, the one-tailed Tanuki's Jinchuriki. He wrote out a brief message for his student and summoned a monkey to him. The monkey bowed to Hiruzen and briefly took note of the name on the scroll before disappearing. Hiruzen buried his face in his hands and said, what in the hell have you gotten yourself mixed up in, Naruto? To the empty room. Jiraiya, a monkey, materialized on the bathroom floor in front of Jiraiya, who rolled his eyes. Really, sensei? He asked himself and thought. The toad sage laughed at this idea and then accepted the scroll that the little monkey was presenting to him. I wonder if his bad sense of timing is a skill or just unhappy coincidence. He said. As soon as the scroll arrived, the monkey quickly disappeared while still holding its nose. Jiraiya gave a wistful laugh. His thoughts were, blame sensei for that one, it's not my fault he sent you to deliver this to me now of all times. After he finished laughing, Jiraiya unfolded the scroll. He read it, and as the scroll's contents set in, all thoughts of humor vanished. As usual, the contents of the scroll were brief, ambiguous, and coded, but Jiraiya was able to understand the main idea with ease, and what he understood was sufficient to give him the impression that everything was falling apart. Foundling and baggage have left sandy nest. Ox cart now contains an egg of sand, said the scroll. Jiraiya remained completely perplexed by that ox cart situation. Though he had no idea what it might be, he was certain that had to be a code for something. Whatever it was, he was aware that Naruto and his baggage, as the Hokage had so lovingly called Hinata, were on it. He was also aware that egg of sand could only be used to describe the Kage's son. Jiraiya was aware of the boy's reputation for danger. Jiraiya shuddered if he had been duped into accompanying Naruto and Hinata. Naruto, you had better be safe when I find you. If you aren't, I don't know what the hell I'll do. You just better be safe, he said loudly. He rolled his eyes at himself for vicariously threatening someone about what he would do to them if they didn't live long enough for him to reach them, then sighed at his inability to think of a suitable threat for what he'd do if Naruto wasn't okay when he got to him. Jiraiya concluded his business and headed for bed, shaking his head. He was exhausted from that message, and it was growing late. Naruto for the next few days, Naruto was more than happy to let Gaara lead them through the desert. Even though he was gradually learning to recognize some of the desert's characteristics, it still mostly appeared to him to be nothing but sand in every direction. Nonetheless, Gaara was able to tell them where to find water, where to find cover from the desert winds, and even where they might come across small animals like snakes and lizards that would supplement their food supply. During the first week or so, having Gaara with us was really beneficial. Naruto gradually came to the realization that Gaara was mainly guiding them eastward after they had been wandering around the desert for 9 days. One afternoon, Naruto asked him, "Where are we going, Gaara?" Gaara grinned and replied, "There's a cave I found one time when I managed to sneak out of the village. It's right on the border between the desert of wind and the forest in the land of fire. No one knows it's there but me, and it's a great place to hide out and watch the border patrols both here in the land of wind and in the land of fire. Plus, if you're careful, you can sneak across the border and hunt in the forests over there, and there's a lake not far from there, too. It's about as close to an oasis as you'll find in the desert of wind. Naruto gave this some thought. It sounds like a good place to hole up for a while. Maybe we could even get some training in there. All right, then, Gaara. Lead on, he said after a few seconds. Hinata gave a nod. She also enjoyed the way it sounded. Gaara remarked, it's also really cool in there. The redhead chuckled and continued, and even on the coldest nights, it stays warm. Even on the hottest days in the desert, the cave stays nice and cool. Naruto grinned. Gaara's cave was beginning to sound more and more perfect. He mused to himself, it almost sounds like a safe house of some kind. Not long afterward, he would be regretting not considering that idea more. Jiraiya, as he read the most recent scroll that his former sensei had given him, Jiraiya growled. Foundling, baggage, and egg are all lost to the sandy eyes of the fire shadow. Location and condition unknown, the text on the scroll stated. Jiraiya detested being kept in the dark more than anything else in the world. Furthermore, this scroll was sent as an overt declaration that he was in the dark, rather than merely keeping him in the dark. It was almost as if his old master was making fun of his ignorance. Jiraiya shook his head, telling himself, Sensei wouldn't do that. He's just trying to keep me apprised of the situation. Nevertheless, Jiraiya detested feeling powerless and ignorant, and having his godson out there, wandering around in the desert with the most dangerous child ever, was essentially making him feel that way. The old sage did not enjoy the experience. It was Jiraiya's 1000th time reviewing his schedule. There was just nothing he could do to expedite his mission at this time. The white-haired man knew his opportunity was imminent, but it was not approaching quickly enough. Jiraiya screamed in sheer frustration, tossing his head back and tugging at his long mane of hair. Those who were unfortunate enough to hear it would later describe it as sounding like a demon's shrieking, and it could be heard more than a mile away. The sound, according to people a mile away from Jiraiya, gave them goosebumps all over their arms and legs and made the hair on the back of their necks stand on end. To put it mildly, it was a terrifying sound. The silent scream subsided after a minute, and Jiraiya found himself sitting on the floor, rocking back and forth with his arms wrapped around his legs. The man was in tears, even sobbing. In a tiny, pathetic voice, he repeated, Naruto, please be okay, please, please. After 3 weeks of residing in their cave hideout, Naruto, Hinata, and Gaara experienced a near-miss. When they returned to the cave one evening, they discovered clear evidence of habitation and a roaring fire burning close to the entrance. Naruto motioned for Gaara and Hinata to follow him and keep quiet. A small group of leaf ninja were inside when they got as close as they could to the entrance without being noticed. Naruto motioned for his friends to wait and to become silent once more. The blonde edged toward the doorway until he could hear the shinobi's voices. One of them complained, Man, this patrol sucks. Yeah, really, said another, letting out a little sigh. Being sent to the edge of the desert on patrol is such a pain. Naruto couldn't see the shinobi directly from his vantage point, so the first two voices sounded rather young, but the third one was a little older and, he would swear, somehow familiar. You two, stop bellyaching. The third voice screamed angrily. We could have been sent to far worse places. Hell, we could have been sent to patrol a hostile border. This duty should at least be peaceful. With a sigh of relief, Naruto scooted back to his companions. He asserted, they're not after us. At this, Gaara and Hinata both let out a sigh of relief. They're just on a patrol. Routine, probably. Hinata thought about it. She questioned, are they leaf? Naruto gave a nod. Her companions nodded in agreement. Well, at least we aren't in any real danger with them, then. Still, probably best they don't know we're here, she said, so, I guess we need to find a new campsite until they leave. Naruto growled. That hadn't occurred to him. Then Gaara raised her voice. I know a spot not far from here, he replied. Naruto and Hinata nodded, and the three friends packed up their cart and headed for the new campsite. I doubt your patrols go quite that far into the land of wind, so we should be safe there. Iruka Naruto did not realize that the voice he had heard in the cave was that of Iruka. He and his new genin team were present on the first C-rank mission. His team wasn't taking it well. It was just a matter of routine that they were sent to patrol the border with the land of wind. Iruka and the team were ready for bed after his little tirade of frustration. All four of them went to bed for the night after Iruka installed a low-level barrier on the cave entrance that would only notify them if someone entered. The Hiruzen, for what seemed like the 1000th time that day, The third Hokage let out a frustrated growl. His spies in the Land of Wind had sent him another update, this time with nothing to report in it. Since leaving the Sand Village, Naruto, Hinata, and Gaara had not been spotted. The old man snarled at his own sense of futility once more as he penned another condition unknown style message to Jiraiya. The Toad Sage had once told the Hokage that he detested feeling worthless and powerless more than anything, and Hiruzen was now fully aware of both the reasons behind his student's feelings and what his student was trying to say. Jiraiya, the moment had arrived. Jiraiya would miss it if he didn't hurry. He would not permit that to occur. Even though he was an old super pervert, he was also a fierce ninja, and today he would show anyone who ever questioned him or believed he had lost his edge that they were mistaken. The white-haired man realized more and more that this was the dumbest thing he had ever done as he ran through the hidden stone village. But if he could just manage this, it might mean that he could get out of this damned place in a few days, or at most, weeks. He had initially believed that if his crazy stunt succeeded, he would be stuck there for months, but as the day drew nearer, he realized that if everything went according to plan, which isn't likely at all, he would be able to leave almost immediately. However, if he survived at all, his cover was almost certain to be blown if things went wrong. He wasn't going to miss his opportunity, though. Jiraiya ran even faster, his eyes now full of determination. He made a self-promise to himself, I will not miss this chance. Naruto waiting annoyed Naruto. It was annoying to have to camp out in the desert once more, but waiting for the Leaf Shinobi to depart was making him go crazy. He complained, this is the worst. We could train, Gaara remarked, grinning slightly. It would help pass the time at least. That is true, said Naruto. Any suggestions? Then Hinata raised her voice. I could help you too with chakra control, she replied. Gaara gazed at her, astonished that he would be part of her plan. What? She inquired. Gaara let out a sigh. Retorting, I've never been included like that. After Hinata gave a slight smile, Gaara went on, and I don't know what you mean by that, either. Frustrated, Hinata shook her head. Gaara listened carefully as Hinata described what chakra is and how to control it so that there is little to no waste when various jutsu and such are performed. You must really be like Naruto. I've seen teachers flat out telling him not to worry about chakra control. I guess they didn't even tell you what it is. That sounds like something I could definitely use, Naruto grinned. After saying, come on, you two, let's go. The three of them dashed into the desert to get some practice outside of their camp. After all, destroying their home wouldn't do. Hinata stood between Naruto and Gaara as they faced each other. Hinata inhaled deeply, focused her chakra in her eyes, and made a hand gesture. She softly exclaimed, Byakugan, while using the dojutsu of her clan. Her vision expanded to almost 360 degrees, causing the veins around her eyes to bulge and her violet eyes to appear slightly wider. She could also see her two companions' chakra networks. She turned to Naruto first and said flatly, channel your chakra, concentrated at the bottoms of your feet. She then said to Gaara, you do the same. Naruto gestured with his hand. Gaara awkwardly mimicked the gesture, and they both attempted to focus their chakra. At first, neither of them was very successful, but with Hinata's help, they managed to control a fairly constant flow of chakra in their feet. Looking around, the blue-haired girl noticed a rock outcropping nearby that was roughly straight vertical. Now, using your chakra, you should be able to stick to that and walk up it, she said, pointing to it. Gaara smiled. Although a little strange, that sounded like fun. He moved in its direction and planted a foot against the rock wall. He felt his foot adhere to the ground, and the chakra on his foot supported his weight as he stepped upward. He walked a few paces up the wall with ease. That's awesome! Naruto exclaimed before leaping up the wall. After taking a few steps, Naruto slipped and fell. Gaara was distracted by Naruto's yell, and the redhead slipped and fell as a result of the disruption to his chakra. At the base of the rock wall, the two landed in a tangled mass of arms and legs. Hinata laughed at them both. See, it's not as easy as it seems, is it? Gaara complained, I only took my focus off it for a second, and I was on the ground. Can you do this, Hinata? Asked Naruto, and the girl nodded. Naruto yelled, show us, in a manly manner. Hinata gave him a raised eyebrow. If we see you do it, maybe we can figure out where we went wrong. Hinata grinned. She reflected, Naruto is always serious when it comes to training, but he can be such a goof at times. With her eyes narrowed in concentration, Hinata walked slowly and calmly up the rock wall while channeling chakra to the bottoms of her feet. She had been practicing this since she was 3 years old, but even she found it difficult. By now, at least, she could manage it. She glanced at the two boys on the ground and asked, Did that help? The fact that they seemed to be upside down made her laugh so hard that she lost her footing and slipped off the rock, landing on top of the two boys and creating yet another tangle of arms and legs. Naruto glanced at Hinata after they had untangled themselves. He teased her, saying, "I thought you could do this." "I can," replied Hinata. She pushed Naruto playfully and said, "Besides, it's your fault I fell. But even for me, it's not exactly easy, and if you lose focus for even a moment, you fall." At this, Naruto arched an eyebrow. "What? I didn't do anything." Hinata laughed. She pushed Naruto back and remarked, "I know, but you two looked so funny it made me lose focus." Naruto abruptly turned to face Gaara, who was standing there observing them with some uneasiness. "It must have been your red hair," Naruto remarked in jest. He winked and said, "It was too bright for her eyes." Uncertain of how to react, Gaara blinked. However, Hinata saved his life. "If anything was too bright, it was your crazy blonde spikes," she told Naruto. Hinata gave Gaara a small smile, and Gaara cautiously returned it. Naruto sulked. Naruto remarked, "All right, let's try this again. Gaara, I'm getting up this rock before you do." To his surprise, Gaara felt a strong urge to beat Naruto up that wall. He asked himself, is this what it means to have a friend? Or a rival? Grinning, Naruto dashed toward the wall. Gaara tried to climb the wall again, but he was a little more methodical about it. Hinata grinned. She thought to herself, "I'm glad these two are getting along." She reactivated her Byakugan and observed their advancement. Naruto and Gaara both appeared to be something the cat dragged in after hours of training, and they were both worn out. "Come on, you two," expressed Hinata. "Let's get back to camp. I'd say you two are doing really well for your first day." Gaara and Naruto exchanged a smile. Naruto gave Gaara a shoulder pat. Naruto exclaimed, "Yeah, we're just that awesome." Gaara had no idea what to do with his own life. He was reflecting on something that had been bothering him for some time as they headed back to their campsite. "So, why are you two so accepting of me?" he said. Naruto laughed. "Well, for one thing, I already know if you tried to go after Hinata, I would end you. It's happened once before, which is how we got that cart, so I know I can and will do it. For another, you're just like me," he responded with seriousness. Although Naruto's remark about killing him had given Gaara chills, he was certain that Naruto could carry out the task if necessary. Gaara knew not to mess with these two because of the way Naruto said it. A hand was placed on Naruto's shoulder by Hinata. "What he means, Gaara, is we trust you. There's nothing for us to fear from you, and we know it, so we trust you. We just hope you trust us, too," she continued. Gaara gave a small smile. In response, "I do trust you," he said. "I'm just not used to be accepted. No one in the village ever did. They all wanted me to go away, or die." Gaara was depressed, and Naruto recognized the emotion. "I felt that way for a long time, too, Gaara," he replied. Startled, Gaara looked up. Gaara nodded as Naruto said, "No one wanted me around, they just looked at me with this cold look in their eyes. I was so alone. It was awful." He felt precisely that way. Naruto went on, "But then I found people who did accept me. Iruka Sensei back home, the Hokage, and then Hinata here." Gaara inquired, "So, why did you leave?" He had been curious, but until now he had not had the guts to ask. After giving Naruto a quick glance, Hinata looked down and away. Naruto remarked, "Hinata's father threw her out, her family disowned her. They were going to seal her. I couldn't let them do that, so we left." Gaara, "Oh. I see," she said. Naruto nodded and said, "So you left your village to protect your friend. Would you say you value her more than your village?" Gaara asked after giving this some thought. Naruto didn't have to consider that. Hearing Naruto say it so firmly that he cared more for her than the village, Hinata blushed angrily. "You mean do I value one of the only people to ever accept me over a village full of morons who treated me like I was worthless? Hell, yes, I do." Then Naruto added, "And I would do anything, even destroy the village if I had to make sure Hinata was happy," grinning sincerely at her. Hinata's redness deepened. She did everything she could to avoid fainting. Naruto and Gaara both saw this, but they remained silent. Gaara had no idea what it might mean, and Naruto was accustomed to Hinata blushing. They returned to their campsite as a result of the silence they had fallen into. In order to avoid thinking about what Naruto had said, Hinata busied herself preparing dinner for the three of them. Though Hinata had begun to grow somewhat smitten with the blonde, she knew in the back of her mind that he was merely stating that she was a good friend. She knew it was moving toward true love, even though it was still a long way off. He had begun it by protecting her from the bullies, and it had grown further when he prevented her from being sealed. Since he rescued her from those kidnappers once more, Hinata had grown to rely on him and his strength out here in the desert. Hinata was being observed by Naruto. Lately, he had been spending a lot of time doing that. He was actually protecting her, not that he was staring at her or anything. After traveling with her for a month, he had come to the conclusion that Hinata was genuinely adorable. He knew she was important to him, but he wasn't sure if he had feelings for her. Gaara was observing them both. He was beginning to consider these two to be friends, though he was still not sure what to make of it all. It was an odd sensation. Both he and his loved ones cared for each other. Even though his inner voice was still begging for blood, it was much easier to ignore when he was with these two. At least it was a good thing, he supposed, if that were the case. Jiraiya felt a sense of victory. He had succeeded. He had seized his opportunity and was now traveling to the land of wind. He thought to himself, man. It's about time something worked out for me. The toad sage produced a scroll, called forth a small toad, and gave it the scroll. But the toad nodded, took the scroll, and disappeared. Deliver this to Sensei for me, please, he said. Along with all the files the Hokage would require to complete Jiraiya's mission, the scroll included a captured shinobi. He could see the desert that constituted most of the land of wind on the horizon in front of him. All right, Naruto. I'll be there soon. You better be okay when I get there, he said loudly. And I can finally find out what that damn ox cart is, he thought to himself. Gazing around the desert, Jiraiya let out a sigh. There was no end to the sand. He was aware that the three children in this mess could only be located in one way. He took a seat, folded his legs, closed his eyes, and went into a meditative state. His nose became much more bulbous after a moment, and his cheeks grew more swollen, extending the red marks on them. His eyes had become like the eyes of a frog when he opened them. After his senses were overwhelmed, he discovered 3 chakra signatures concealed in a nearby cave. Then he thought, there they are. Jiraiya leapt across the desert with his greatly enhanced power from Sage Mode and was outside the cave in a matter of seconds. He made a dramatic entrance, complete with a huge stomp landing and a somewhat real shockwave. The sound from outside made Naruto, Hinata, and Gaara jump. Naruto called out, what in the world was that? After he had recovered. Gaara glanced worriedly at his companions. His words, someone's out there, I felt the sand compact where. Whoever it is landed. That was a hell of a landing, whoever it is. In an attempt to relax, Hinata inhaled. Her words, we should see who it is, Byakugan. Hinata saw a huge man with excessive amounts of chakra as her bloodline came into play. Even after accounting for their tailed beasts, her 2 friends still lacked a tremendous amount of chakra. Also, there was something wrong with his chakra. The majority of chakra was blue, and because of their beasts, Naruto and Gaara both had some red in them, but this was green. In some way, it made Hinata think of the wind, the earth, and the water. There's someone out there, all right, and he has more chakra than I've ever seen in a person. Even you two don't that much, Hinata remarked after deactivating her Byakugan. Naruto let out a gasp. Even we don't? That's insane. Who in the world could have that much chakra? Is it another Jinchuriki? Hinata gave a headshake. Most chakra is blue, and you two's beast's chakra is red. This is green. I've never seen that before, she continued. It's like looking at wind, water, and the earth all at once. After giving this some thought, Gaara asked, could it be Sage Chakra? Hinata gave him a perplexed look. She said, Sage Chakra? What's that? Gaara gave a shrug. When he said, I'm not totally sure, I just remember hearing about it one time. My father was having a meeting with someone, and they said they were trying to master Sage Jutsu, but they couldn't get Sage Chakra under control. After giving this some thought, Hinata remarked, it would make sense, I guess. I've never seen chakra this potent before. Even your tailed beasts pale in comparison to this. A massive man with white hair down his back, a swollen face with red stripes running down from his eyes, a bulbous, warty nose, and a headband that read, oil, on it entered their cave before they could react. Yes, he exclaimed. He was whipping his hair around himself as he said, it is indeed Sage Chakra that I have in me. For it is I, the famous hermit of Mount Myoboku, the immortal spirit, the Toad Mountain Sage. It is I, Jiraiya. He ended the statement in a dramatic pose. Hinata laughed at the antics of the elderly man. She said, Jiraiya, huh? I think I've heard that name before. A look of pure unadulterated perverted joy appeared on Jiraiya's face. I'm already famous, and my book isn't even out in paperback yet, thought he. You're the author of Make Out Paradise, aren't you? Hinata asked after a brief pause. Jiraiya smiled. Yes I am, I'm so glad a cute girl like you has heard of me. Naruto growled. Hey, pervy sage, don't even think about trying anything with her. Jiraiya growled at the moniker, but he was aware that he was powerless to ignore it. Gaara interrupted him before he could say anything. I believe you are one of the legendary Sanin of the Hidden Leaf, are you not? Right away, Naruto and Hinata were alert. Naruto declared, we're not going back to the Hidden Leaf. I don't care if you are one of the Sanin, I'll take you down if you try to take us back there. In an instant, Jiraiya knew he would have to take this seriously. I have no intention of taking you back there, he replied. Well, not until you want to go there, anyway. Naruto growled. The Hyuga were going to seal Hinata, he stated, and the Hokage couldn't stop them. We're never going to go back there and let her be sealed. Jiraiya gave the two a startled look. That small detail had not been shared with him. It undoubtedly gave the situation an intriguing twist. He remarked, I get it, kid, I won't force you to go anywhere you don't want to. I'm here to make sure you are all right, and to help you. Naruto became less vigilant. He hadn't anticipated that response. You are? He inquired. Jiraiya gave a nod. And what about Hinata and Gaara? Jiraiya grinned. This was similar to Konan, Yahiko, and Nagato. He said, I can train all three of you, after a brief pause. Hinata also let her guard down, but not entirely. She questioned, you can train us? How? Jiraiya's smile widened slightly. Well, for one thing, I'm a seal master, and I can probably help both Naruto and Gaara control the other chakra they have inside them. As for you, Hinata, you have the Byakugan, and you've been learning the gentle fist, right? Hinata grinned. I know some tricks that are part of that style. I can teach them to you. You mean you can help us learn to control the chakra of our tailed beasts? Replied Naruto. Jiraiya leapt. Well, yes. How did you know about that? He responded. Hinata laughed. Naruto knows about it because he used the fox's chakra to save us before we got all the way out here. That's how we got the ox cart, she continued. Jiraiya let out a gasp. Will I finally find out what that really is? He pondered. The ox cart, right. Where is it, anyway? He said out loud. Hinata gestured toward the cave's interior. It's back there. We keep all our stuff in there so we can move at a moment's notice if we ever have to, she continued. Can I take a look? Inquired Jiraiya. Hinata gave the boys a look. After a moment, they nodded. Sure, she replied. We can give you the grand tour, if you like. Jiraiya grinned. Saying, lead on. Then, the four moved farther into the cavern. Jiraiya was shocked to see two oxen as his first sight. It turned out that a cart was parked in the corner of the cavern they had entered. He exclaimed, wait, it's really a freaking ox cart? Naruto questioned, what do you mean? Jiraiya let out a sigh. The Hokage has been keeping me informed on you three and your journey out here. He said you had an ox cart, and I figured it had to be code for something. I never thought you would actually have an ox cart. How in the hell did you get that? He asked, his disbelief apparent in his tone. Naruto let out a sigh. He related to Jiraiya how he used the fox's chakra to kill the men who had abducted him and Hinata in order to sell her for her eyes. As Naruto was speaking, Hinata approached him and put an arm around him. She was expressing her support in silence. Naruto gave her a smile and put an arm around her. For now, Jiraiya grinned. It was simply too adorable for words. He listened to everything Naruto had to say as well. Sincerely, I'm so glad you're okay, he said. I'm sorry I wasn't here for you sooner. I wanted to be, but I couldn't. He was waved away by Naruto. Jiraiya nodded and said, we've been doing just fine on our own. That was evidently true to him. I wouldn't trade that for anything, Naruto continued, holding Hinata close to him. And besides, if we hadn't been on our own, we never would have gotten so close, he said. Jiraiya laughed. The child still had hope. And what about you? What do you see in this knucklehead? He said, turning to Hinata. Hinata reddened. He saved me. I was all alone, my family had thrown me out, and Naruto was there for me. He let me stay with him, and then, when my family wanted to seal me, he ran with me so that they couldn't. She was blushing more deeply. She trailed off, and he's always been my inspiration. Ever since. That day. She really didn't want to tell Jiraiya about that because she hadn't even mentioned it to Naruto yet. Her comment caught Naruto's attention, but he put it away for the time being. Later, he would discuss that with Hinata. Turning to Jiraiya, Naruto replied, I'll protect Hinata, no matter what. She means the world to me, and I would take on the world to protect her. I don't care what happens to me or the rest of the world, so long as she's with me, I'll be fine. Naruto's words caused Hinata to flush. He had to go say something like that because she had just stopped blushing from what she had said. To everyone's surprise, Gaara was the next to speak. These two were my first friends, he stated. I will never forget them, and I will do anything I can to help them. Jiraiya grinned. You know, that right there is the absolute core of Will of Fire. I'm glad to see you three all have it, he said with sincerity. Naruto gave a snort. Will of Fire, huh? I thought that was all about protecting the village and everyone there with your life if you have to. Jiraiya gave a headshake. Not really. The Will of Fire is all about protecting the people who are precious to you with your life. The village is secondary to that. Hinata grinned. Well, I guess that means all I have to do is protect Naruto, she replied. Hinata was squeezed to Naruto. He grinned and said, and all I have to do is protect Hinata. Jiraiya felt his heart constrict inside of him. He asked himself, they really don't have anyone but each other, do they? Out loud, he said, that's a great goal, you two. And you're going to need a lot of training to be able to do it. As it happens, I don't have any more missions for a while, so I can dedicate all my time to training you three. Naruto questioned, what's a while? Jiraiya laughed. Very perceptive, Naruto. I don't have any missions for the next 2 years. That's plenty of time to train you three. Gaara grinned. It would be an honor to be trained by one of the Sanin, said the man. Naruto chuckled. Well, I don't know about that. Pervy Sage here isn't that special, he replied. Jiraiya snarled at the nickname, which had already become ingrained. Then again, it would be nice to have someone actually training us. And if you're really one of the Sanin, you must be a super awesome ninja under all that perverted crap, so. Sure, we'll train with you. The antics of Naruto made Hinata laugh. Indeed, Jiraiya, it would be an honor to learn from you. If you can really help me get better at the gentle fist, your help would be much appreciated, she replied courteously. Jiraiya gave the three children a thumbs up while smiling. He exclaimed, excellent, your training starts now. Get ready for the hardest training of your lives. The three lonesome kids then started the longest training program ever created in the elemental nations. Jiraiya would train them into the ground for the next 2 years, and they would come out of it much stronger than when they began. Gazing up at the Hidden Leaf Village's walls, Naruto inhaled deeply. 3 years had passed since he and Hinata last visited their former residence, and they were still apprehensive about going back. Naruto turned to Jiraiya, who was following them, and expressed their shared concern. Are you sure Hinata's family won't cause us any trouble? He inquired. Jiraiya gave his godson a smile. He responded, I assure you, Naruto, that everything will be alright. The Hyuga have officially removed Hinata as a member of their clan, so they can't do anything to her, no matter how much some of them might want to. And Hinata, if you're wondering, it was your father's doing. He told the Hokage he was doing it to protect you from the clan. Hinata gave a nod. She remarked, I figured as much. 3 years ago now, Jiraiya had long since told her the truth about why Hiashi had forced her to leave that fateful night. Although it didn't make much sense to her, she realized that her father truly loved her despite his rocky exterior. Sighing, she continued, it's still scary to think of being in the same place as them. I would much rather not be sealed, especially after all this. Jiraiya chuckled. Don't worry. Your father has made sure that can't happen. If they try it now, they'll be defying the Hokage, and they know better than to do that. Hinata received a rare smile from Naruto. He reached out and gently took her hand in his. Come on, it'll be fine. We can trust the pervy sage, he replied. Although Jiraiya was upset about the moniker, he had to concede that it was effective. After Hinata grinned, Naruto continued to hold Hinata's hand as the three entered the village. As they made their way down the main street, Naruto inquired, so, you said the academy is having their final exams today, right? Jiraiya laughed. That child occasionally had a narrow focus. Yes, they are. I'm going to take you two there right now, actually, so you can get in there. The instructors should know you're coming. The Hokage said you could take the exam. As long as you pass, you won't have to worry about dealing with classes, the blonde replied. At this announcement, Naruto and Hinata both had determined expressions on their faces. While you two are doing that, I'm going to go report to the Hokage. Naruto turned around. We'll see you after the exams, right? Said he. Jiraiya gave a nod. I'll meet you outside the academy once you're done. If for some reason I can't get there, you two should head to the Hokage's office. I'll meet up with you along the way somewhere. Naruto let out another sigh. When he finally said, it makes me really nervous to not have you backing us up. I guess we'll be okay, though. It's not like anything will happen in the academy. Hinata briefly considered the possibility that something might occur. After all, her cousin would probably be present, but she chose to keep this thought to herself for the time being. Jiraiya also kept this to himself, but he was unsure of Naruto's evaluation. Upsetting the blonde needlessly was pointless. The three travelers had reached the academy's entrance gate while they were conversing. Jiraiya remarked, "Well, go on, you two." He left in the direction of the Hokage tower after saying, "I'll see you soon." Taking a deep breath, Naruto gave Hinata a small smile to reassure her, knowing that her nerves were just as shot as his. He then squeezed her hand and walked slowly toward the academy building, Hinata following. The two found a group of aspiring genin waiting for their own exams in the classroom where Jiraiya had instructed them to go. 3 people in particular stood out from the crowd. There was a girl with 2 buns in her hair, a boy with a ridiculous bowl cut, and Neji, whom Hinata recognized right away. After blinking, Naruto and Hinata moved to 2 vacant seats to await their turn. But Neji stopped them before they could get to the seats. In an irritated tone, he questioned, "What are you two doing here?" His remark, "Failures like you shouldn't be here, especially not today," was primarily aimed at Hinata, but he included Naruto in the group because he knew that Naruto had taken her out of the village. In his opinion, both were failures. After giving Hinata a quick squeeze on the hand, Naruto disappeared. He was able to close the distance between him and Neji in less than a second, and before Neji could even think, he was shocked to find a kunai against his throat. Neji needed a full second to take in the situation. With his teeth clenched, Naruto said, "You really shouldn't underestimate us." When Neji realized Hinata was also gone, he was about to inquire as to why Naruto had used the pronoun "us" rather than "me." Her finger was only a few centimeters from Neji's spine, and she was behind Neji. Neji realized that he would have either a severed spine or a slashed throat if the two hadn't stopped. As Neji recalled, Hinata's voice was sweet, but now it was also steely as she said, "I know I was a failure when you last saw me, brother, but I'm not one now." Neji blinked. He was free of the two when he opened his eyes again. Their hands were clasped once more in front of him. He took a moment to make sure he wasn't just having a strange genjutsu experience. "I suppose I'll have to rethink some things," he told himself. Then he said out loud to the two, "I see. I won't bother you further." After laughing at Neji's response, Naruto and Hinata took seats in the seats they had been heading for when Neji stopped them. After watching as one student after another went to take their exams, the two were soon yawning with boredom. Finally, someone called Hinata's name. Hinata got up and walked to the exam room, saying, "See you in a minute." As Hinata left, Naruto was approached by the boy with the bowl cut and the girl with the bun. "We saw what you did to Neji," the girl said. At once, Naruto became alert. "Yeah?" he replied. The boy answered. He exclaimed, "Yeah, it was quite the youthful performance." Naruto's expression made it obvious that he had no idea what that meant. The girl raised her voice. "What Lee here means is, we were both quite impressed with how you made Neji look like a fool." She laughed. "I'm Tenten, by the way." Naruto smiled hesitantly. "I'm Naruto," he replied. With a broad smile, Lee, the boy with the bowl hair, declared, "I am Rock Lee, and as you have so easily bested my old rival, Neji, you are hereby dubbed my new eternal rival." Naruto would have thought he saw the light ping off the boy's teeth as he spoke. He shook his head and blinked, certain that must have been some kind of illusion. Tenten gave Naruto a pitying glance. With a simple, "It was nice meeting you, Naruto," she said. "I hope we'll see you again in the future." Naruto gave her a nod. Then Lee raised his voice. He grinned again and said, "Yes, it was very nice to meet you, Naruto. And I will see you again, my rival." Naruto gave the boy's antics a small laugh. "All right, but don't think you'll beat me," he responded. "I can't let Hinata see me fail." This was followed by Tenten and Lee leaving. Naruto laughed. He said to himself, "It's good to see the village hasn't changed much." Naruto watched Lee and Tenten depart for their own exams after a few more minutes had passed. After a while, Naruto's turn arrived. Naruto was shocked to see Iruka Amino waiting for him as he made his way to the exam room. He said, "Iruka, what are you doing here?" Before leaving, he had not known the instructor well enough to address him as sensei, but at least he knew the man. Iruka gave Naruto a smile. "I heard you and Hinata were coming back today," he replied. "I wanted to be here to give you your test personally." Naruto gave a shrug. He found that to be nearly nonsensical, but he chose not to give it much thought. He said, "So, what do you need me to do?" Iruka grinned. "If you can perform a substitution, transform, and create 3 clones, you pass," he stated. Naruto gave an eye roll. It was just absurd how low those standards were. After dispelling them, he changed into Iruka after creating 3 shadow clones and replacing one of them. He said, "Good enough?" Iruka laughed when he heard his own voice, retorting, "Yep, that's perfectly fine, Naruto." Additionally, he handed Naruto a headband and said, Be here tomorrow morning at 8 for team assignments. Taking the headband, Naruto put it on right away. He replied, I'll be there, and turned to walk out of the room. He missed the moment when Mizuki appeared after Iruka vanished in a cloud of smoke. It was Mizuki growling. He thought, that freaking demon wasn't supposed to pass. His mind said, I suppose I'll just have to find some other way to get the scroll for Lord Orochimaru. Ignorant of the danger he had just encountered, Naruto left the academy building. He approached Hinata, who was waiting for him, and put an arm around her shoulders. Like a necklace. Hinata wore her new headband. Naruto remarked, well, that's over with. Hinata put an arm around Naruto's waist while giggling. Her response was, yes, it is. Naruto nodded, and the two departed the academy, saying, let's go find Jiraiya. Sensei. Jiraiya was completing his report on the two as they traveled to the Hokage's office. After 3 years of training with me, I'm fairly certain they'll pass the exams with no trouble whatsoever, Jiraiya said. The Hokage let out a sigh. I just hope you haven't been training them in your research, he replied. Jiraiya appeared insulted. Oh come on, you know it's possible, don't even try to deny it. Jiraiya gave a shrug. Well, sure, I suppose it's possible. But no, I didn't train them in that. I think Hinata would have killed me if I had tried, he said with seriousness. Mostly, I trained them up in their basic jutsu. I made sure Hinata could make clones, which she can just fine, and I taught Naruto shadow clones when it became apparent the basic clone would always be beyond him. Anyway, I imagine they're done with their exams by now. They'll probably be here soon. It made the Hokage laugh. Yes, I imagine they are. When you see them, you can let them know they'll be placed on a team together. I don't think it would do anyone any good to separate them just now. No, it wouldn't, concurred Jiraiya. One last thing before I go. Where do you intend for them to live? Hiruzen let out a sigh. Well, Hinata is technically not a Hyuga anymore, so she can't go there. Naruto's old apartment got rented a long time ago, so that's out. I guess they can either get a new apartment, or you could let them stay at your old home, Jiraiya. After giving that some thought, Jiraiya nodded. I guess that would work. I assume I won't be in the village too much for the next year or so I could let them stay there while I'm gone, said the man. Hiruzen gave a nod. That seems to be the best solution. Once they get some money from missions and such, they can get their own place if they want to, he stated. After giving this a nod, Jiraiya departed the office. Jiraiya turned as soon as he left the Hokage tower and found himself staring at his two pupils. He said, hey, you two, perfect timing. Hinata and Naruto approached their sensei nonchalantly. Naruto inquired, how did the Hokage take it? Jiraiya laughed. He's fine. He said you two will be on a team together, so you don't have to worry about that. He also said I should let you two stay at my home for the moment. If you want to get your own place after you get some money, you can, but my place is your best bet for now. Naruto laughed. After all those years, he took the box from his old apartment and pulled it out. He opened the box and said to Hinata, I told you I wasn't leaving without this. Now you'll see why. A massive stack of papers was sitting in the box. Jiraiya gazed in disbelief at the box. He questioned, is that what I think it is? At the older man's response, Naruto laughed. My father left it to me, he stated. The Hokage wouldn't tell me who my dad was, but he said this was his legacy to me. Naruto finally found what he was looking for after searching through the box. He gave it to Jiraiya and remarked, I think we'll do just fine with this. Jiraiya gazed in disbelief at the paper he was holding. It was an action. This is the deed to the old Uzumaki home, he exclaimed. Naruto gave a nod. With a look of complete surprise on his face, Jiraiya returned it. Well, I guess it makes sense it would belong to you, Naruto. I'm just surprised they would tell you that. Naruto laughed. The Hokage made me promise not to use anything in the box except in dire circumstances. I think this qualifies, he stated. Jiraiya grinned. The child had a point, he had to concede. Yeah, this qualifies as dire, all right, he replied. All right, you two can go on over there and get yourselves settled. I have some things to get done tonight, but I'll catch up with you tomorrow. Good luck with your new teammate. He waved to the two and left. When they were by themselves, Hinata grinned at Naruto. Is that the only thing in there you didn't want to leave behind? She inquired. Naruto gave a headshake. I figured. It's fine, you don't have to show me everything in there. I trust you. Naruto laughed. The words, thanks, Hinata nodded, and the two started walking in the direction of Naruto's ancestral home. Come on, let's go. When they arrived, neither of them knew what they would discover, but they were both aware of the one significant item they would discover. They were eager to get it back because it was the only thing they had been lacking for the previous 3 years. It was home.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.